Chapter 1428. This isn't good. Hui Haifeng frowned. Anyone with a certain level of discernment could sense that human emperor's rhythm wasn't right. In the past, human emperor didn't make any unnecessary movements and could easily block Zhao's sword. But now, he could clearly sense that human emperor's actions weren't as simple as before. Zhou had no choice. In order to ensure that there was a backup plan when a certain part of his body suffered a problem, he had no choice but to make more preparations. Therefore, his actions weren't as simple. Although he could barely withstand Zhao's attack, Zhou knew that this wasn't a long-term solution. He had to resolve the current situation before an irreparable problem occurred with his body. Zhou's mind raced as he thought of a way to resolve his current passive situation. It wasn't impossible for him to reverse the situation and kill a Calamity-grade battle at the Terror grade, but he had to resolve the huge problem of the Calamity domain. The calamities Zhou had previously slain didn't have much of an effect on him. However, Zhao's Calamity domain was somewhat different. It was a very complicated domain power. There were rule-bending powers, curse-like powers, mental attacks, and some other things. The nomological powers had already been restrained by the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder, and the curse-like powers had been resolved by Truth Listener. Zhou could withstand mental attacks with his willpower. Now, there was still an unknown force affecting Zhou's body. He had to resolve this force before he could truly fight Xiao. Crack! As Zhou's fingers twitched uncontrollably, he failed to block Zhao's sword in time. Although he had retreated in time, he was still stabbed in the shoulder by Xiao. The rapier pierced through the dragon-imprisoned armor, leaving a tiny hole in it. As Zhou retreated, the tip of the rapier left his body as blood spewed out. Thankfully, the dragon-imprisoned armor blocked it, giving Zhou time to retreat. The strike only injured Zhou slightly and failed to penetrate his bones. Many people's hearts tightened. Human Emperor's injury was a very bad sign. Zhou was at a disadvantage as Zhao's attacks became more and more intense. He was like an elegant swordsman as he repeatedly stabbed with the rapier in his hand. It was so fast that no one could see the sword beam. Zhou retreated as he fought, but due to his body being affected by the Calamity domain, he constantly made mistakes and suffered injuries. More and more bloody holes appeared on the dragon prisoner armor. Zhou was constantly inscribing various essence energy arts, attempting to see if there was any power that could restrain the unknown power in the Calamity domain. However, after trying all the essence energy arts he was good at, none of them could restrain the unknown power. If my guess is correct, Zhao's Calamity domain should be related to faith. As Zhou fought, he kept thinking. Most of the time, brute force couldn't change the situation. Instead, it might make the situation worse. Zhou needed to find a better solution. Now, Zhou determined that Zhao's Calamity domain was a power that was close to faith. It had the nomological powers of a deity and the nature of a curse. It could also control a person's psyche. No matter how he thought about it, it was related to faith. If it's the realm of faith, then what kind of power can affect my body? Since I'm not his believer, my will won't be affected by it. With Truth Listener around, curses are useless against me. In theory, I should be able to withstand the power of faith. Zhou couldn't figure out the problem instantly. However, Zhao's attacks became more and more intense. More and more wounds appeared on Zhou's body as blood constantly spewed out from the blade. Furthermore, the injuries were getting closer and closer to his vitals. As the Calamity domain's influence on Zhou was increasing, Zhou's actions sometimes began to make serious mistakes. Once, one of his legs was nearly severed by Xiao. Save him! Wang Lu clasped her hands together in front of her chest. She didn't dare watch any further as she closed her eyes and prayed. Not good. Human Emperor has been greatly affected by the Calamity domain. His body is beginning to lose control, Xia Luchuan said worriedly. It wasn't just Xia Luchuan. Even ordinary people could tell that Human Emperor's situation wasn't good. Even if one's eyesight was so poor that they couldn't see the battle, the blood that splattered out made it obvious how terrible human emperor's situation was. Furthermore, the media had done a slow-motion replay. Under the slow-motion replay, one could vaguely see the scene of human emperor being stabbed. This made people even more worried. There was basically silence in front of the Rubik's Cube and televisions everywhere. Some women and children couldn't help but press their palms together to pray for human emperor. Most humans didn't wish for human emperor to lose, much less wish for human emperor to die. Could it be the power of misfortune? In many myths and legends, not only can deities bestow curses, but they can also affect humans with misfortune. With a thought, Zhou Wen secretly summoned a few lucky companion beasts in their equipment form and wore them inside his armor. However, the lucky equipment didn't work. The frequency at which Zhou Wen's body lost control increased. Zhou Wen immediately knew that he had been wrong. It wasn't the power of misfortune. If it was the power of misfortune, even if he didn't have enough luck, it would still have a certain effect. However, these lucky equipment were useless now. It was definitely not the power of misfortune at work. If it's not misfortune, then what could it be? Zhou Wen's mind raced. Although the injuries on his body were constantly increasing, his thoughts remained extremely calm. He didn't show too many fluctuations. The dense sword holes on his body and the blood that flowed out didn't seem to be from him. That human emperor is rather interesting. The Xing deity sized up the human emperor with interest and said, as if talking to herself, "I helped Xiao advance to the calamity grade with a doppelganger. Although that doppelganger is only at the mortal grade, it combined the power of Zhao's guardian to form a deity domain. It has an absolute suppressive effect on creatures below the calamity grade. Even mortal-grade creatures will be greatly affected and may even become slaves. That human emperor is a mere terrorgrade, yet he can last so long in the deity domain without completely losing control of himself. It surprises me. Your Excellency, there's not much time left. Will Xiao be fine?" By the side, Saint looked at the time and realized that there were less than 20 minutes left before the Rubik's Cube's countdown ended. "That's enough. Under the deity domain, human emperor has no chance of turning the tables," the saint god said indifferently. He was very confident because half of Zhao's calamity grade strength came from his avatar. Chapter 1429. Zhou Wen was indeed having a hard time. He had already tried all sorts of powers, but he was unable to crack Zhao's calamity domain's influence on him. Even if he wasn't afraid of being exposed and used the minor heavenly cycle killing array, he still couldn't change his current disadvantage. The minor heavenly cycle killing array needed Zhou Wen's control. If he couldn't even control his own body, how could he control the minor heavenly cycle killing array? When the time came, the minor heavenly cycle killing array would collapse on its own, rendering it useless. If it's not the power of misfortune, what could it be? Zhou Wen was puzzled. He couldn't think of any power he hadn't thought of. This made Zhou Wen suspect that his judgment was wrong. Zhao's domain power had nothing to do with faith. However, he quickly eliminated this possibility. No matter how he looked at it, the domain was definitely related to the power of faith. He's almost at his limits. He shouldn't be able to hold on any longer. Tian was standing not far from Zhou Wen with a complicated expression. The wounds on Zhou Wen's body worsened. The dragon prisoner armor was filled with sword holes, and the armor was about to be dyed red. Thankfully, it was the dragon prisoner armor. If it were any other armor, Zhou Wen would have long been stabbed to death. Even with the dragon prisoner armor's absolute defense, it couldn't hold on any longer. If this continued, the dragon prisoner armor would probably shatter. I can't break the rules, but I definitely can't let Zhou Wen die at the hands of others. Yes, I want to avenge Yana. I can't let others kill him. Tian seemed to convince herself as she muttered to herself. Besides, I'm not helping him. I'm just maintaining fairness. Mommy said that maintaining fairness is God's responsibility, not breaking the rules. That human is using the calamity domain to deal with someone without a domain. That's unfair to begin with. Besides, I'm not trying to shatter his domain. I'm just wiping away the blessings inside. This isn't helping Zhou at all. It's wrong to use the blessings on an enemy. Isn't this letting Zhou take advantage? I'm just helping him correct it. Yes, that's right. Actually, I'm helping that person, allowing him to defeat Zhou and avenge Yana. Tian finally mentally prepared herself and was about to remove the blessings in the God domain. But before she could do anything, Zhou suddenly did something unexpected. Zhou extended his hand and a white club appeared in his hand. Tian couldn't help but stop. For Zhou to suddenly summon such a white club at such a time, he likely had some idea. Perhaps it was some secret weapon. That club looks a little big. Its attack power must be very high, right? It looks very strong. It must be the secret weapon of the human emperor. Quick, get rid of that Xiao guy. He's too aggrieved. Everyone widened their eyes, eager to see how Zhou would turn the tables. Although the chances weren't high, there had to be some special use for human emperor to summon such a companion beast at such a time. Brother, do you know what companion beast that big club is? Zhang Yuji looked at Zhang Chuanqiu. She had a deep understanding of companion beasts, but she didn't know what kind of companion beast it was. You're a companion beast expert yourself. If you don't know him, there's even less of a chance for me. Zhang Chuanqiu's words were a little humble. His knowledge was in no way inferior to Zhang Yuji's, but he couldn't recognize what companion beast it was. However, for human emperor to take it out at such a time, and from the looks of it, it should be a very domineering weapon. Human emperor is probably going to risk his life, Zhang Chuanqiu said after some thought. Many people had the same thoughts as Zhang Chuanqiu. They felt that at this stage, human emperor was definitely going to risk his life. Everyone's eyes were focused on the white club. It looked like it was made of crystal jade. It was thick and large, even larger than an extra-large baseball bat. In human emperor's hand, it looked especially imposing. It looked even more ferocious than the immortal culling sword in his other hand. He's moving, someone shouted. The club in Zhou Wen's hand finally moved. Everyone held their breaths, waiting for human emperor's next shocking strike. Some people even wondered if the club would directly destroy Zhao's calamity domain. Although they knew that it was almost impossible, they couldn't help but fantasize. Bam! The club struck out with all its might, but this strike left everyone dumbfounded. They gaped as though they had swallowed an invisible duck egg as they stared at the livestream in a daze. Human Emperor's club wasn't aimed at Xiao, but at his own head. This. What's going on? Human Emperor knows that he can't win. Is he committing suicide? Xiao Youchuan's mouth was agape for a long time before he finally said that. His face was filled with disbelief. Of course, Zhou didn't want to commit suicide. The club was actually formed from Tai Sui. It looked ferocious, but its offensive strength wasn't strong. To Zhou, who was wearing armor, such an attack couldn't injure him at all. The reason Zhou did this was because he had thought of another possibility. Zhao's domain power was definitely related to faith. As for the various powers related to faith, Zhou thought about them and finally thought of the power of blessing. Humans believed in gods, so the most direct need was naturally to obtain blessings. This was also the most basic power of God. Previously, Zhou hadn't thought about blessing because the power of blessing was clearly beneficial. However, he couldn't think of anything in the end. Zhou carefully thought about the power of blessing. After all, he had seen the Thearcha's power of making a wish. Making a wish was beautiful, but the Thearcha's power could also be used for evil. Then, the power of blessing might not be absolutely positive. For example, words like, "I wish your whole family XX," often appeared on the internet. It was clearly not beautiful. The more Zhou thought about it, the more he felt that it was right. Only this seemingly good but actually very sinister power could bypass the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder and truth listener's evil nullification and directly affect Zhou Wen's body. Furthermore, Zhou Wen's body had been affected by the calamity domain for so long, but he wasn't injured. Instead, he could vaguely sense that the strength of his muscles seemed to have increased a little. With this in mind, Zhou considered how to attempt to remove the power of blessing. Luck definitely wouldn't work, because blessing was a seemingly beautiful power. Luck would only strengthen the power of blessing and not weaken it. Thankfully, the higher the value, the greater the effect of the blessing power. Good things might not necessarily have a good outcome. In theory, he should use bad luck or some power that could block the blessing. Unfortunately, Bamboo Blade had already shattered. Otherwise, it might be of some use. Zhou thought for a moment before looking at Tai Sui's terraform. He realized that Tai Sui's terraform was something he had seen before. It was a negative effects symbol that would make his luck value very low. Nothing would drop. His heart immediately stirred as he summoned Tai Sui after turning it into a club. He planned on giving it a try. Chapter 1430. Tai Sui's attack had to hit someone for the effects to be effective. As the saying went, one had to touch Tai Sui's head. Although Zhou didn't need to touch Tai Sui, he still needed to touch Tai Sui. Zhou had previously tried it. The stronger Tai Sui's attack was, the stronger the effects of the Tai Sui symbol would be. Zhou didn't feel any pain when Tai Sui struck Zhou's head, but the feeling of losing control immediately lessened. The automatic strengthening of his muscles also decreased significantly. It works! He was overjoyed and smashed his head with the bat again. The main reason was that Tai Sui's strength was too weak. Zhou could give it more strength by smashing it. On the other hand, holding Tai Sui with his hand would also be affected. Therefore, everyone saw a dumbfounded scene. Human Emperor held a huge club in one hand and smashed it at his head. In the other hand, he held the immortal culling sword and fought Xiao. Xiao, who originally had the upper hand, was gradually being turned around by Zhou. Soon, it was difficult for him to gain the upper hand. What's going on? Xiao Youchuan's eyes widened. Is this the legendary version of me hitting myself when I'm ruthless? Human Emperor is about to explode. Does he have to let Xiao hit him a few times before beating him down? Could this be the legendary god of destruction? The more he injures himself, the stronger he becomes? When everyone saw Human Emperor smashing himself with a club in one hand and fighting Xiao with the other, he became more and more ferocious as he fought. He seemed to be about to suppress Xiao. They were all amused. The saint looked at Zhou in a daze and didn't say a word. The saints beside him were as silent as cicadas in winter. They didn't even dare raise their heads, much less make a sound. They didn't even watch the battle. Without the blessing's power causing trouble, Zhou used the immortal culling sword to pull Xiao back to the same starting line. Xiao was clearly surprised when he saw Human Emperor smashing himself and him at the same time. However, when he looked at the time, his expression immediately turned solemn. There were only 16 minutes left. How troublesome! Xiao frowned inwardly. At the same time, his figure flashed and he left the battlefield. He didn't continue attacking Zhou. He raised the rapier in his hand in front of him, the blade right between his eyes. The reason why calamity-grade supers are called calamity-grade supers is not something you can understand. Following Zhao's voice, a strange energy rose from the rapier in his hand. Zhou stared at Xiao as the Tai Sui rod in his hand continued smashing at him. However, he was secretly alarmed. The rapier in Su's hand seemed to gradually fuse with his calamity domain. The feeling was indescribable, as though the entire domain was attached to the rapier. In the next instant, the rapier in Xiao Luo's hand moved again. If Zhao's previous sword technique was only strange in its trajectory, then his current sword technique was no longer as simple as its trajectory being difficult to understand. This time, the trajectory of the sword could be seen clearly by many people. However, even though they could see it clearly, they felt like crashing into it. It was as if the rapier was a shining flame, and the others were moths flying into the flame. It was as though a devil's voice was telling them to charge forward and let the rapier pierce through their chests. How enjoyable would that be? This was unreasonable, but even the people watching the battle through the live broadcast had the urge to charge at the rapier and let it pierce through their chests. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't charge over, many people would have already slammed into the rapier. He just advanced to the calamity grade, and he advanced with the help of external forces, yet he's able to comprehend human domain fusion. Such talent is rare. The Xing deity revealed a look of surprise. It was already very rare for an ordinary creature to be able to use domain power stably after advancing to the calamity grade. To be able to use domain power as he pleased like Xiao Luo required a long period of comprehension and familiarity. It was like a person who had never ridden a bicycle before. He had just obtained an F1 and had just learned how to drive it, but he was able to run at the level of a professional racer. It was no wonder that the Xing deity was surprised. However, what surprised the Xing deity even more was that even though Xiao Luo had reached such a stage, Human Sovereign was still able to block all of Xiao Luo's attacks. Furthermore, Human Sovereign was still fighting with a sword in one hand and using a rod to hammer himself with the other. Although Xiao Luo was very strong, Zhouwen was immune to his domain power. With the disqualification, unless Xiao Luo was so fast that Zhouwen couldn't see his body's movements, no matter how powerful the rapier was, it would be blocked by the immortal culling sword. As time passed, Xiao Luo's attacks became more and more intense, but he failed to injure Zhouwen. As for the magic cube's countdown, there was less than a minute left. There was a look of worry in Xiao Luo's eyes. His eyes flickered as though he was secretly thinking about something. Sigh. Xiao. What a pity. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have chosen you. The Xing deity sighed as though he felt regret. It was unknown what he was feeling regretful about. Zhouwen fought Xiao with all his might. He fought a calamity at the terror grade, especially against such a calamity. Even if Zhouwen used all his strength, he could only block Xiao Luo's attack. It was difficult for him to defeat him. In fact, Zhouwen realized that Zhao's various techniques, be it movement techniques or sword techniques, weren't inferior to his. If not for his disqualification and various essence energy art powers, it would be difficult for him to match Xiao Jun's strength even with the immortal culling sword. Furthermore, for some reason, after such a long battle, Zhouwen felt a sense of familiarity. It was a familiar feeling that he couldn't explain. Suddenly, Zhouwen realized that Zhao's sword speed had increased again. This time, it wasn't only his sword speed. Even Zhao's speed had increased. It was much faster than before. This left Zhouwen alarmed. If he couldn't even see Zhao's movements clearly, it was impossible for him to block his sword. Zhouwen sized up Xiao and realized that the armor on his body was emitting a holy light. The light was pure and flawless, like pure glass. It was as though it had purified all the impurities in the armor, causing the armor to gradually turn transparent and crystalline. As the holy light became intense, Xiao Luo's strength became stronger and faster. It was so fast that Zhouwen couldn't even see Zhao's movements clearly. Clang! Clang! Zhouwen blocked 3 strikes in a row. Even with the augmentation of the immortal culling sword, Zhouwen was still forced to retreat. His sword-wielding hand kept trembling. The webbing between his thumb and index finger had already ruptured as blood constantly seeped out. If you want to survive, kill Human Sovereign before the countdown ends. Otherwise, fall into samsara with Human Sovereign. The Xing deity looked at the god of combat without any emotion in her eyes. The reason why Xiao could advance to the calamity grade was because he had fused with the Xing deity's avatar. The Xing deity had already activated the avatar. If Xiao didn't kill Zhou before the magic cube's countdown ended, Xiao, who had fused with the Avatar, would self-destruct. The power of self-destruction was enough to destroy any creature below the Calamity grade. Chapter 1431. Zhou pushed Truth Listener and Brahma's strength to their limit. With the augmentation of the disqualified, he forcefully blocked and dodged Zhao's attack. However, Zhao's strength and speed had already exceeded the limits of what Zhou could withstand. The glow on his body had already illuminated the entire Venus dimensional zone. Intense silver sword beams crisscrossed. The blinding light made it impossible to see what was happening inside. All one could see was the blinding sword beam on the screen intensifying. Apart from that, nothing could be seen. Zhou constantly retreated. All he could do now was constantly move and rely on his judgment and blind guesses to resist Zhao's attack. Crack! Crack! The dragon-imprisoned armor on Zhou body was penetrated again and again. This time, not only did it penetrate the armor, but even his bones and flesh were penetrated. Several times, Zhou vital points were nearly injured. Although the spectators couldn't see the battle inside, the powerful sword beams were enough to let everyone know what was happening. Human Emperor! Hold on! People were already at a loss for words. All they could do was pray inwardly. Despite not seeing anything, they still stared intently at the screen. The blinding light made their eyes tear up, but they couldn't bear to look away. The countdown ticked by. There were less than 10 seconds left, but Xiao still hadn't killed Zhou. 10, 9, 8, 7. Zhou kept counting inwardly. He could also tell that there was only one outcome from Zhao's crazy outburst. He would definitely explode and die. He was counting the time. As long as he activated the Chaos Egg to forcefully block the energy of the self-destruction, he could obtain the final victory. In the Holy Land, the Saint Deity was also looking at the Magic Cube's countdown. At the same time, he was staring at Xiao. If Xiao could kill Human Emperor before the countdown ended, he could stop Zhao's self-destruction. If he couldn't, he could only let Xiao die. However, from the looks of it, it was probably impossible for Xiao to kill Human Emperor before the Magic Cube's countdown ended. Forget it. This is his fate. With only 2 seconds left on the countdown, the Saint Deity wasn't willing to wait any longer. Furthermore, he didn't wish for any accidents to happen. With a thought, he was about to detonate Xiao. In the Venus dimensional zone, the light on Zhao's body had already turned corporeal. Zhou felt his strength instantly swell and knew that it was time. Just as Zhou was about to summon the Chaos Egg to withstand it, an unexpected change suddenly happened. The source of Zhao's power was his guardian armor, and because the guardian armor had fused with the holy deity's doppelganger, it had advanced to the Calamity grade. In theory, Xiao was only at the epic stage. With the guardian armor being controlled by the holy deity, it was impossible for him to escape the guardian armor. This was because his own strength was too weak. The guardian armor was the foundation of his strength. However, just as the guardian armor was about to explode, the guardian armor on Xiao Chao's body seemed to have been teleported out and instantly disappeared. As Zhou had been paying attention to Xiao, the intense holy light was unable to affect Truth Listener and Brahma. Therefore, he could clearly see that after the guardian armor on Xiao disappeared, Zhao's true body was revealed, but he didn't see his true face. This was because almost at the same time, a white armor had already enveloped his body. A red cloak fluttered in the wind, and a huge sword was carried on his back, crossed with a Gatling gun. Although it only took an instant for the figure to rush into the maze, Zhou knew very well who the figure belonged to. How can it be him? Zhou was slightly taken aback. The figure was clearly Tianzhua. Apart from him, no one had such strange armor and weapon. It was like a soul but not a soul, like a guardian but not a guardian. Zhao's guardian armor had already been detonated by the holy deity, but when he saw the guardian armor and Tianzhua's figure, The holy deity immediately seemed to understand something. His expression changed drastically as his figure flashed away. Zhao's guardian had fused with his avatar. The moment the guardian was moved away, he had already sensed the guardian's location. It was in the Holy Land where Zhao lived. It was also where the saints lived. Boom! When the holy deity arrived, the guardian armor had already exploded and the energy was blooming like fireworks. The Xing deity stood in Xiao Luo's room and saw the imprisoned Xiao Luo being enveloped by the exploding guardian armor. Under the immense energy impact of the guardian armor, his face and facial features were instantly destroyed. His skin and flesh were rapidly melting in the explosion. The holy deity's gaze focused as though time had frozen in his eyes. The ground and bed that had been blasted apart by the explosion froze in the air. The saint god walked in front of the exploding Su, reached out and pressed her hand on the exploding guardian armor. Then, with a casual fling of her hand, the exploding guardian armor, along with all the energy generated by the explosion, was thrown into the void. Boom! In the void, the terrifying explosion was like the final glory of a star's self-destruction, illuminating the void for an instant. The holy deity looked at Xiao, who no longer looked human, as though he had been skinned. A trace of anger couldn't help but flash across his eyes. He hadn't realized that Xiao was in Tianzhua in disguise. He had been tricked. Fortunately, he had arrived in time at the last moment. Otherwise, Xiao wouldn't have been the only one to die. All the saints here would have been buried with him. The holy deity knew very well that because the guardian belonged to Xiao, the imprisoned Xiao must have been trying to summon his guardian back. That was why Tianzhua could use Xiao, who was imprisoned here, to transfer the guardian back. Otherwise, no matter how powerful he was, it was impossible to teleport the guardian that was about to explode here. Xiao, who looked like a skinned and bloody man on the ground, squirmed like a worm. The strange sounds coming from his ruptured throat were not only painful, but also filled with endless hatred. And Tianzhua, you've taught me a lesson. The holy deity glanced at Xiao, who was curled up like a worm on the ground and trembling in pain. His eyes gradually calmed down. A layer of Zhao's body had been sliced off. He was like a bloody skeleton. The pain he was experiencing was unimaginable to humans. Do you want revenge? The holy deity asked Xiao, who was enduring inhuman pain. Xiao's neck was also a bloody mess. His throat had been ruptured, so he couldn't make any sound. He desperately opened his mouth, but he couldn't make any sound. He couldn't tell if it was his mouth or the bloody hole, but no sound came out. Are you afraid of death? The holy deity asked again. Zhao's twisted and trembling body tried his best to shake his head. However, his head was shaking so violently that it was difficult to even shake it. Just moving it made his entire body hurt. Even so, he still shook his head with all his might. If not for the holy deity's fast reaction and unimaginable abilities, he would have been a dead man. Then hand your life over to me. Only then can you obtain the power to kill your enemy. The holy deity extended her hand in front of Xiao. Chapter 1432. When the sword beam was at its strongest, the light on the screen suddenly vanished. The eyes of the humans watching the battle were unable to adapt to the instantaneous changes in light and darkness. It took them a second to recover their vision. The scene displayed on the Rubik's Cube screen was still in front of the Golden Palace. However, only Human Emperor was left standing there with his sword. Xiao was nowhere to be seen. Before anyone could figure out what had happened, whether Human Emperor had won or where Xiao had gone, the Rubik's Cube countdown ended. Almost at the same time, the door to the Golden Palace opened and a golden beam shot out. Boom! The golden beam's power reached an unimaginable level. In an instant, the entire Golden Palace exploded from the golden beam, turning into countless fragments that splattered everywhere. It wasn't just the Golden Palace. The entire Venus dimensional zone exploded as golden beams of light shot into the sky. Zhouwen wanted to teleport away, but he didn't have the time to use his teleportation ability. The golden beam had already struck him. The Rubik's Cube's screen was completely occupied by the golden light. Then, all that could be heard was a terrifying explosion. The Rubik's Cube's screen gradually pulled out of the Venus dimensional zone. It slowly retreated, and retreated until the golden explosion shrank and couldn't occupy the entire screen. Only then could people finally see some of the content. At that moment, Venus was erupting with a terrifying brilliance like a huge firework that was spewing out energy. The moment Zhouwen was struck by the beam, he believed that he was doomed. Such terrifying energy was even more terrifying than the self-destruction of Zhao's Calamity Guardian. Even the Chaos Egg might not be able to withstand it. Furthermore, he hadn't summoned the Chaos Egg in time. However, despite being bathed in the golden beam, Zhouwen's body wasn't injured. The beam's energy seemed to have its own consciousness as it burrowed into the metal ball Zhouwen had just obtained. This is the birth of a Venus companion beast. Zhouwen immediately understood what had happened. From the looks of it, the Venus companion beast had already chosen him as its owner. At that moment it was entering his metal ball. I wonder if the other metal ball is still useful? Zhouwen recalled that he still had a metal ball that he had obtained using his own identity before placing it in the chaos space. Zhouwen thought for a moment and took out the metal ball. After all, he had heard that all metal balls could hatch companion beasts. From the looks of it, he needed to inject energy before the metal ball could become a true companion egg. Even if this metal ball couldn't become a true Venus companion beast, it could receive some remnant energy and hatch an ordinary companion beast. To his surprise, the moment Zhouwen took out the metal ball, the golden energy that had surged into the other metal ball split into two and infused into the two metal balls. Everyone looked at the scene in the Rubik's Cube. Venus was constantly spewing out dazzling light. After a while, there was a sudden bang. The terrifying explosion was so deafening that it felt as if their eardrums had been torn apart. Many people were temporarily deaf. The scene in the Rubik's Cube was completely occupied by the golden light produced by the explosion. No one could see anything. Even without looking at the Rubik's Cube screen, a golden light had appeared in the real sky, illuminating the night sky. After a while, the light in the sky disappeared. Only then did the Rubik's Cube screen gradually return to normal. People looked at the screen and realized that Venus was still the same Venus. It didn't seem to have changed much. However, when the Rubik's Cube's camera gradually rotated, people saw an unbelievable scene. On the other side of Venus, half of the planet had been blasted apart. At that moment, only half of Venus was left. The other half was riddled with holes, as though it was the scene of the apocalypse. The Rubik's Cube's screen stopped and returned to the rankings. Then, the last name lit up like a burning golden flame. Then, it gradually disappeared and finally returned to nothingness. Following that, the second-to-last name lit up. One after another, the names on the rankings kept disappearing. Finally, when Saint Zhao's name disappeared, only Human Emperor was left in first place. Human Emperor's name also lit up, but it didn't disappear like the other names. Instead, it became brighter and bigger until it occupied the entire screen. And in the light, Human Emperor's figure appeared on the screen. Then, the scene of Human Emperor's challenge also appeared. There was also the scene of his battle with Saint Zhao. It also flashed by quickly. As the various scenes of Human Emperor played, the Rubik's Cube's camera gradually zoomed out. Those scenes became smaller and smaller. Finally, only the two shining golden names of Human Emperor were left. The name also gradually shrunk. At this time, people discovered that the position of the word Human Sovereign was actually in a star chart. In that huge and complicated star chart, the shining word Human Sovereign was in the position of Venus. The name was eternally marked on Venus. The Rubik's Cube's screen ended. The star map disappeared and the screen gradually turned dark. Finally, the Rubik's Cube turned completely black and no longer had any reaction. So, it's still Human Emperor who got first place? That's right. In the end, Saint Xiao still couldn't stop Human Emperor. Our Human Emperor is indeed invincible. Haha, I knew it. Human Emperor won't lose. Could it be that Human Emperor killed Saint Xiao? Most likely. Otherwise, how could Human Emperor get first place? Holy sh*t, will Human Emperor's name forever represent Venus in the future? Interesting. If that's the case, does that mean that every star has something similar on it? Will we have the opportunity to mark our names on other stars in the future? Dream on. Even if it's possible, it won't be your turn. As everyone discussed, Zhou Wen's expression was somewhat solemn. He floated in the void and looked at the remaining half of Venus. He thought of how no one on Earth would be spared if Earth's companion beasts were to appear in the future. I can't let Earth's companion beasts appear. Zhou Wen only had this intense thought left in his mind. If Earth was really like Venus, then how many people on Earth would survive? It was probably less than 1 in 100 million. Zhou Wen held the 2 metal balls that had already turned into companion eggs in his hand. Just as he was about to use his phone to check the stats of the 2 companion eggs, he suddenly saw a cosmic behemoth approaching from afar. The cosmic behemoth's body was transparent as blue light shimmered inside. It was the one Zhou Wen had seen at Tsukuyami's place. Chapter 1433. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and leave. Tsukuyami's figure appeared beside Zhou Wen. Without any explanation, she pulled Zhou Wen away using spatial teleportation. In the blink of an eye, she returned to the asteroid cluster. What are you waiting for? If you were any later and were trapped by its calamity domain, you wouldn't even have a chance to escape. When that happened, you would just be waiting for death, Tsukuyami said as she rolled her eyes at Zhou Wen. Ahem, I just didn't expect it to appear there, Zhou Wen said in embarrassment. Didn't I tell you that calamity creatures require massive amounts of energy to advance? It's naturally no exception. Are you ignoring my words? Tsukuyami said unhappily. Since it wants it, shouldn't it head to the Venus dimensional zone itself? With its strength, it shouldn't be difficult for it to obtain first place, right? Zhou Wen was somewhat puzzled. It wants to, but it's a companion beast. Do you think a Venus companion beast will give itself to a companion beast from another planet? Tsukuyami looked at Zhou Wen as though she was looking at a bookworm. So there's such a restriction. Only then did Zhou Wen realize that wild companion beasts couldn't obtain companion beasts from planet. Therefore, the astral behemoth was guarding near Venus, waiting for someone to bring the Venus companion egg out. Go back. As long as you return to Earth, you will be safe. No calamity creature can enter Earth without being punished. The cosmos is too dangerous and not suitable for you, Tsukuyami said. How are you? Did you gain anything after coming out? Zhou Wen asked after some thought. I didn't gain much, but I didn't starve to death, Tsukuyami said casually. That's good. This is for you. Zhou Wen took out a companion egg and handed it to Tsukuyami. Why are you giving me this? Tsukuyami took the companion egg and curled her lip. You are too insincere. If you really want to thank me, shouldn't you give me the Venus companion egg you just obtained? What's the use of giving me a metal guard companion egg? Don't tell me you think this thing can fill my stomach? Take it with you, Zhou Wen said before getting up to teleport back to Earth. He had exchanged his life for the Venus companion egg, so how could he give it away so easily? He left a spatial mark on the metal guard companion egg. If Tsukuyami needed it in the future, he could directly go to her side. After returning to Luoyang, Zhou Wen found Anxing. Before Zhou Wen could ask, Anxing said, Young master, the overseer is back. Zhou Wen thought to himself, that's right. He's definitely the one pretending to be Xiao. In the previous battle, Tianzhua hadn't held back. Zhou Wen could sense that he had used all his strength. This made Zhou Wen suspect that Tianzhua was taking the opportunity to kill him. As though seeing through Zhou Wen's thoughts, Xing hurriedly whispered, "Young master, the overseer said that if you don't go all out, you won't be able to fool that person in the Holy Land. However, he believes that you will definitely be able to hold on." "If I didn't hold on, would he have killed me?" Zhou Wen said coldly. "Definitely not. The overseer knows his limits," Xing hurriedly said. Zhou Wen thought to himself, who knows what his limits are? Perhaps his limits are to kill me. However, Zhou Wen knew that if Tianzhua had the intention of getting rid of him, he would have had plenty of opportunities back when he came to Luoyang to study. There was no need to wait until now. Just as Xing was about to say something, Zhou Wen said, "By the way, do you know an expert at forging essence gold weapons? Our family has many weapon forging masters. There are a few with good craftsmanship." "Young master, do you want to forge an essence gold weapon?" Xing asked curiously. "My bamboo blade has shattered. I've brought back the fragments and scabbard. See if you can think of a way to restore it or recast it." Zhou Wen handed the fragments and scabbard to Xing. Zhou Wen was used to using bamboo blade. Furthermore, bamboo blade had the effect of jinxing its owner. It should be of some use against powers like blessings. Zhou Wen wanted to give it a try and see if he could restore it. "It's already shattered to this extent. I'm afraid it's impossible to restore it. I can only try melting it and recasting it," Xing said as he looked at the fragments. "Then recast it." Zhou Wen didn't know if the recast bamboo blade would still have the effect of jinxing its owner, but he still wanted to bring along a weapon that was convenient for him. "All right, I'll take it back and let my masters study it. I can't be sure of the time, but it shouldn't be too long." Xing put away the fragments and scabbard. "I'm in no rush to use it. I'll do it slowly. It's best if it can be restored to its original state," Zhou Wen said. "All right, I'll get them to try their best to find the original bamboo blade and recast it according to the original map." With that said, Xing left with the fragments. Zhou Wen returned to his room, and just as he took out a gold star companion egg, he saw the antelope and chick run over and stare intently at the gold star companion egg in his hand. "What are you doing?" Zhou Wen hurriedly stored the companion egg into the chaos bead and looked at the antelope warily. "Look at you. Isn't it just a gold star companion egg? Who would snatch it from you?" The antelope curled its lips and said disdainfully, "I'm just here to see what the companion egg can hatch." "I see. That's easy. I'll show you when I hatch it." Zhou Wen took out the gold star companion egg. So, the antelope charged over like a phantom and opened its mouth to bite the companion egg. Zhou Wen was already prepared. He retracted his palm and quickly retreated, causing the antelope to miss. "What did you say just now?" Zhou Wen mocked the antelope. The antelope didn't feel embarrassed at all. Without a blush or panting, it said, "Give me the companion egg. I'll take you to Mount Laojun to retrieve the treasure. The treasures there are much better than this companion egg. Go get it yourself. I'm not interested." Zhou Wen teleported to the moon with the gold star companion egg, not giving the antelope a chance. He didn't go to Goddess Supreme Yin's place. Instead, he scanned the gold star companion egg with his phone in a deserted spot. Golden WRM, Calamity Grade, Evolvable, Life Providence, Metal Life Form Life Soul, Metal Essence Wheel of Destiny. Love is stronger than gold Terraform, Een Blade, S-Grade, Calamity Domain, True Gold Fire Refinement, Human, Strength, 100 Speed, 100 Constitution, 100 Essence Energy, 100 Talent Skill, Midas Touch, Strangulation, Unstoppable, Dominating Body Companion Form, Scissors. Zhou Wen was rather satisfied with these stats. It was at the Calamity grade at birth. Although it was only at the human stage, it was enough for Zhou Wen. Now, he truly had a Calamity grade companion beast. The next time he encountered a Calamity grade opponent, he didn't need to risk his life. The only surprise was that this thing's companion form wasn't a gun. Looking at the creatures in the Venus dimensional zone, Zhou imagined that it would be a gun. He took out the other gold star companion egg to take a look. Zhou was immediately alarmed. Chapter 1434. Golden WRM, Calamity Grade, Evolvable, Life Providence, Metal Life Form Life Soul, Gold Essence Wheel of Destiny, Love is Firmer Than Gold Terraform, Yang Blade, S-Grade, Calamity Domain, True Gold Fire Refinement, Human, Strength, 100 Speed, 100 Constitution, 100 Essence Energy, 100 Talent Skill, Midas Touch, Strangulation, Unstoppable, Dominance Body Companion Form, Scissors, Yang. The two companion beasts had the same stats and skills. However, the first one's terraform was a Yin blade, and its companion form was also a Yin attribute. As for this one, its terraform was a Yang blade, and its companion form was a Yang attribute. They were clearly companion beasts formed from the same energy, but one was Yin attribute while the other was Yang attribute. Zhou really couldn't figure out how they could be differentiated. Since he had already obtained the companion beast, Zhou couldn't be bothered to think too much about it. He directly hatched the companion egg. Calamity-grade companion beasts were ferocious. Zhou felt the essence energy in his body flow into the companion egg as though a dam had burst. If Zhou didn't have Slaughter's massive essence energy to support him, he would probably have been sucked dry in an instant if he were at the Terra grade. Now, Zhou suspected that if the energy in the Venus star hadn't split into two and injected into the two metal balls, he would have been sucked dry. Thankfully, that didn't happen. After a while, the companion egg absorbed enough essence energy and transformed into golden WRM beams that condensed on Zhou Wen's right finger. Soon, a metallic WRM tattoo appeared on Zhou Wen's right hand's middle finger. After flickering for a moment, it gradually disappeared under his skin. Zhou Wen hatched another Yin elemental golden WRM companion egg. Before long, a metallic WRM tattoo wrapped around his right index finger. It flickered for a while before gradually vanishing. With a thought from Zhou Wen, two golden WRMs appeared on his fingers. They transformed into golden WRMs that tore out of his fingers and danced in the air. The two golden flood dragons were not made of flesh and blood. Instead, their bodies were made of gold-like metal. Their whiskers, scales, claws, and bodies were all gold in color. However, they only looked like gold. In reality, they were not gold. Their density was far greater than gold, and their hardness and toughness were also many times greater than gold. Zhou Wen extended his hand and beckoned. The two golden WRMs instantly transformed into two strange golden weapons that landed in his left and right hand. Zhou Wen held the blade and carefully sized it up. The scissors blade was truly strange. It was 4 feet long and looked like a WRM saber. It was wide at the front and narrow at the back. The WRM's head was the tip of the blade, and the WRM's tail was curled up into a handguard. Just from its style, it resembled a rapier, but it was very different. After all, it was a saber, not a sword. Furthermore, the hilt and blade presented a very odd angle. When Zhou Wen held the scissors, he kept feeling that the angle of the blade was wrong. Why does this look so familiar? The more Zhou Wen looked at the two scissors, the more he found them familiar. With a thought, he stacked the two scissors together and immediately exclaimed, "Holy sh*T, isn't this a pair of scissors?" The two scissors overlapped each other, making them look like long-bladed scissors. However, as there was no fixed point in the middle, they couldn't be used as real scissors. Although the design is a little ugly, it's fine as long as it's useful. Zhou Wen entered the dungeon on his phone. He originally wanted to find an instance dungeon to test the might of the Golden Flood Dragon scissors. However, before he clicked on the dungeon, a notification popped up on his phone. Discovered fertile companion beast. Do you wish to give birth? Zhou Wen clicked on it and realized that the fertile companion beast that his phone had upgraded was the pair of golden flood dragons. The conditions for them to give birth to each other were that of another golden flood dragon. Furthermore, their yin and yang attributes were a perfect match. That works too. Zhouwen was overjoyed as he clicked on Give Birth without any hesitation. Back then, Han Guang and Shaolian had given birth to Shadowbearing, a companion beast of the same level. Now that the two golden flood dragons were giving birth, they would definitely be able to give birth to Calamity-grade companion beasts. Wouldn't that mean that he would have another Calamity-grade companion beast? I have to give birth. It's best if I have a few more. Zhouwen watched as the two golden flood dragons entered a reproductive state. The progress bar hadn't moved, so he temporarily ignored them. All he needed to do was wait for the Calamity companion beasts to be born. Then, he could lead a group of Calamity companion beasts to crush the various dungeons. He might even have a chance to kill the 4 generals of Chess Mountain's MO family. The 4 Calamity-grade fellows were really difficult to deal with, especially the demonic general who had once stolen the bead from Zhou Wen's umbrella. The Chaos Umbrella was terrifyingly powerful. Even the small Heavenly Cycle Slaughter Array could be directly destroyed. Zhouwen had no chance at all. Now, Zhouwen was waiting for the Soul Reflection Mirror and Golden Flood Dragon to come out before killing the 4 demonic generals. Since he was at the moon, Zhouwen took the opportunity to visit Wang Chan. When Wang Chan saw him, she cried and sniffled. She strongly requested that Zhouwen take her back to the Wang family. Zhouwen coaxed and lied to her before she reluctantly agreed to stay for a period of time. Goddess Supreme Yin told Zhouwen that Wang Chan's power of misfortune needed to reach the Calamity grade to be effectively controlled. However, it was almost impossible for humans to advance to the Calamity grade, so they had to make a choice. What Goddess Supreme Yin meant was that it was best to use mythical liquid or spirit casting. Contracting a guardian was the worst choice. However, mythical liquid needed to be created with dimensional creatures with misfortune attribute. The guardian used for spirit casting also had the same requirements, so it wasn't easy to find one. Goddess Supreme Yin couldn't leave the moon, so this matter naturally fell on Zhouwen. Zhouwen couldn't think of any high-level dimensional creatures and guardians with misfortune attributes. According to Goddess Supreme Yin, the level of this misfortune creature couldn't be too high or too low. It was best if it was at the mythical stage, but it had to have immense potential. Zhouwen felt a headache when he heard those requests. In Luoyang's and family's arsenal, Ansheng and a few essence gold blacksmiths were looking at the blueprints of the bamboo blade and studying how to recast it. Although the bamboo blade was also made of essence gold, the essence gold used in the bamboo blade wasn't ordinary essence gold. Instead, it was an essence gold essence produced in essence gold. It was impossible for ordinary essence gold to reach such hardness, nor could it be used in high-intensity battles. The biggest problem now was that it wasn't easy to melt the bamboo blade fragments. It was said that when smelting the 4 Gentleman Sabers materials in the past, the blacksmith had risked entering a dimensional zone and borrowed the earth fire in that dimensional zone to melt the essence gold essence. As they couldn't find the blacksmith who had forged the bamboo blade, nor did they know where he had drawn the earth fire, they could only think of a way to melt it. During this period, the blacksmiths tried several methods, but none of them were able to completely melt the bamboo blade fragments. Ordinary essence gold casting definitely wouldn't work, so they could only report it to Ansheng and get him to think of a solution. However, if the temperature of the flames isn't high enough, I have a solution. Ansheng thought of the chick. It was a descendant of the phoenix. In terms of flames, there weren't many flames in this world that were stronger than phoenix flames. Chapter 1435. After Ansheng discussed it with the other blacksmiths, he planned on returning to the overseer's office and borrowing the chick to melt the essence gold essence. However, before Ansheng could find the chick, Antianzwa sent someone to summon him. There have been so many things to deal with recently. Why aren't you focusing on your work? Why are you always going to the arsenal? Antianzwa said with a frown. And Sheng was afraid that Tianzhua would be unhappy if he knew that he had gotten the best blacksmiths to help him forge the saber, so he said, "The arsenal has recently developed a few generations of essence gold bullets. The effects can't keep up with the evolution speed of dimensional creatures. I just want to see if there's any way to modify the bullets to make them better." "Then what solution have you thought of?" Tianzhua asked as he read the documents. "This is indeed a little difficult. I'm considering it. If it's just pure essence gold bullets, the expenditure is just too great. Our essence gold production is far from enough. Using essence gold bullets like now doesn't have good effect. I'm wondering if there are any other materials that can be more compatible with essence gold to create essence alloys. Not only can it reduce the amount of essence gold used, but it can also guarantee the quality of the bullet." And Sheng had been considering this problem all this time. Using pure essence gold to make bullets was effective, but the Yin family didn't have that much essence gold to spend. It was too extravagant. However, the arsenal's laboratory had tried many materials. Ordinary metals didn't have high compatibility with essence gold. They didn't even help. All that worked was a coating of essence gold. It didn't seem possible to develop an alloy with effects equivalent to pure essence gold at the moment. "Then what material do you plan on using to make the essence alloy?" And Tianzhua continued asking without looking up. "I haven't found a suitable material for the time being. The most likely thing to be used to make the alloy is the bodies of some metal-type dimensional creatures." And Sheng was somewhat helpless. "I have a material here. Take it and see if it can be compatible with essence gold." And Tianzhua took out a flat box from the side of the chair and casually placed it on the table. Then, he casually said, "There's something wrong with the origins of this material. It can't be exposed to the light. Let's see if we can make it into an alloy to forge a weapon. If it doesn't work, destroy it." "Yes, Overseer." And Sheng was somewhat curious and wanted to open the box to see what material it was. "Take it back and read it. Don't disturb my work here. You have to quickly settle the matter I entrusted you with. If it delays your work, scram to Chess Mountain," and Tianzhua said coldly. "Yes, I guarantee I'll complete the mission." And Sheng didn't dare look any further. He picked up the box and walked out. After leaving in Tianzhua's office, and Sheng entered a conference room in a flash. He closed the doors and windows before opening the box to see what material was inside. When he opened the box, and Sheng was stunned when he saw what was inside. Inside the box was a silver rapier. Isn't this the rapier that remained intact after fighting the immortal culling sword?" And Sheng reacted as he picked up the rapier in surprise and carefully sized it up. The silver rapier looked narrow and thin, but it was not light at all when held in the hand. It could even be said to be very heavy. It was a little cold in the hand, like silver made of ice. There were many tiny nicks on the blade. The small ones were like the tip of a needle, while the large ones were the size of a grain of rice. "That's right. It must be that rapier. These nicks should have been left behind during the battle with the immortal culling sword. Although it has suffered some damage, to be able to fight against an existence like the immortal culling sword, the strength of this sword's material is unimaginable. Such a sword, even if I can't see it, it would be a pity to destroy it." Thinking of this, and Sheng's eyes suddenly lit up, as if he had understood something. He hurriedly put the sword back into the box, picked up the box, and rushed to the munitions factory. The rapier was made of the Holy Temple's cornerstone holy iron. However, it didn't mean that any holy temple's foundation was called cornerstone holy iron. In fact, the so-called cornerstone holy iron was the foundation of a holy temple. It was also the core component. If the holy temple's foundation was destroyed, the holy temple would no longer have the foundation of the holy temple. The cornerstone holy iron itself was very strong. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been used to create a foundation. In addition, after the holy temple was created, it had been baptized by the power of the holy temple. A material like the cornerstone holy iron was already considered top-notch. Even calamity-grade supers wouldn't be able to damage it. The immortal culling sword had only left a few nicks on it. It was obvious how powerful this material was. Unfortunately, no matter how strong the material was, it was only a dead sword. It didn't have its own consciousness, nor did it have any energy-strengthening effects. It only had relatively strong material characteristics. The saint god had given the sword to Xiao to withstand the sharpness of the immortal culling sword. The strength used in combat was still a guardian's. Even so, the cornerstone holy iron was still a top-notch material, so how could it be casually thrown away? And Sheng was quick-witted. After seeing the rapier, he understood Tianzua's intentions. From the looks of it, the overseer already knew that I was helping young Master One repair the bamboo blade. That's why he took out this rapier. I wonder how compatible this material is with the essence gold essence. If the combination of the two materials isn't suitable for forging a weapon, wouldn't I be letting down the overseer's intentions? No, I have to think of a way to forge a weapon. After Nxing thought it through, he turned around and returned to Overseer Manor to find the chick. The essence gold essence couldn't be melted without the chick, much less the rapier. It was a material that even the immortal culling sword couldn't slice through. After Zhou Wen returned from the moon, he had been studying where he could obtain a misfortune dimensional creature or find a misfortune guardian. It wasn't a solution to keep Wang Chan on the moon. He had to resolve this problem sooner or later. Due to the teleportation ability, he could return to the 4 zones of Earth in a short period of time. Furthermore, with Tianzua already back, there was no need for him to stay in Luoyang. Therefore, Zhou Wen studied all the dungeons in the various zones and discovered some dimensional creatures that were suspected to have the ability to bring misfortune. However, there weren't many such dimensional creatures to begin with. They happened to be at the mythical stage and had to have great potential. Zhou Wen looked around and studied them for a long time, but he still couldn't be sure. He had a few targets. All he could do was take a look and see if they met Lady Supreme Yin's requirements. Zhou Wen chose among the few targets and finally chose to head to the West District's Pandora Palace Dimensional Zone. There were several dimensional creatures there that were suspected to have the power of misfortune. As the danger wasn't high, Zhou Wen took Yer with him and took her out for a stroll. He treated it as a vacation. Chapter 1436. Inside the Holy Land, the saint deity carried Xiao Shang's body with both hands and walked down the stone steps into the abyss. The abyss was bottomless, only endless darkness. The deeper the saint deity went, the thicker the darkness around her became. It was as though the stone steps would absorb light. All light would vanish when it reached here. If not for the holy light emitted by the saint deity, one wouldn't even be able to see a few fingers. Even someone as powerful as the saint deity's holy light could only illuminate a 3-foot radius. As it was too dark, he couldn't see the surrounding mountain walls at all. He didn't know if there was anything else beside him. Only the steps beneath the saint deity's feet could be seen blurry due to the holy light. In the end, even the holy light on the saint deity's body was devoured by the darkness. The surroundings were as dark as the world of the dead. After an unknown period of time, the saint deity arrived in front of a lake. The surroundings were still dark, but the water in the lake emitted a lustrous glow like a diamond in the darkness. The saint deity placed Zhao's body by the lake and said calmly, "Walk into the lake, and perhaps you will be reborn with the strength to defeat your enemy." Xiao Iran still looked like a skinned and bloody person. The injuries on his body hadn't healed. After struggling to get up, Xiao walked towards the lake without a word. "Don't you want to know where that lake is?" the saint deity suddenly asked. "All I need to know is that there's a power here that can allow me to defeat Tianzua and take revenge." The wound on Zhao's throat had recovered significantly. Although his voice was still hoarse and ear-piercing, he could already speak. Dimensional creatures are unable to establish themselves on Earth. Any dimensional creature that comes to Earth will be suppressed by Earth's laws. Even invincible experts at the apocalypse stage are no exception. Therefore, if dimensional creatures wish to descend, they have to borrow the bodies of Earth's native creatures to retain a portion of their combat strength. The saint deity paused for a moment before continuing, but later on, an expert from a dimension discovered a place where he wasn't suppressed by Earth's laws and could use his strength at will. Isn't that the Holy Land? Xiao asked. In the beginning, there was no Holy Land. There was only a lake. The saint deity continued, within a certain range of that lake, the powers of dimensional creatures will no longer be suppressed. However, once they leave the lake, the suppression of Earth's nomological powers will reappear. Therefore, that dimensional expert entered some research, hoping to use the water in the lake to help dimensional creatures completely escape the suppression of Earth's laws. However, any dimensional creature that comes into contact with the lake water, no matter how powerful it is, will melt into the lake water like snowflakes. After that, the expert found many dimensional creatures and Earth's native creatures to experiment with, but the results were very surprising. None of the powerful dimensional creatures can withstand the power of the lake water, but the native creatures of Earth aren't affected by the lake water. To you humans, this terrifying lake water is no different from ordinary lake water. It won't cause any harm to your bodies. Xiao listened quietly and did not interrupt the Xing god. The Xing deity looked at the lake and continued, but all the Earth's native creatures that entered the lake died one by one. None of them returned alive. Why, didn't you say that there's a power here that can allow me to take revenge? Xiao turned around and faced the Xing deity with his featureless face. He questioned with an ear-piercing voice. Later, that expert looked through many human historical resources and myths and finally learned that this lake's name is Lake of Vexation, the Xing deity said. Vexation? I've never heard of such a lake in any zone's myths and legends, Xiao said after some thought. You might not have heard of this lake's name, but you must have heard of the other side of the lake. The Xing deity looked into the distance. Zhao's eyes were destroyed, so he could not see anything. All he could do was ask, "What's on the other side?" Permitha. The Xing deity's answer shocked Xiao. This lake leads to the other side? Xiao was pleasantly surprised. He knew what the word Permitha meant. With life and death as the shore, nirvana as the shore, abandoning all worries to obtain boundless merit and wisdom? That's just a guess. No one knows if the other side of the Lake of Vexation is the other side because no one has ever reached it. Although this lake is small, even an expert at the apocalypse stage is unable to reach the other side. Only by swimming across the lake can one reach the other side. However, none of the creatures that have entered the lake have returned alive. Then what's the point of me entering the lake? Xiao asked. I once saw with my own eyes a person who was absolutely impossible to survive swim across the Lake of Vexation and reach the other side alive. Furthermore, a human who was absolutely impossible to advance to the mythical stage with a pure human body actually broke the taboo and advanced to the mythical stage with a pure human body, the Xing deity said calmly. Who is he? What happened in the end? Xiao asked. You don't need to know that. All you need to know is that it's very difficult for you to fully recover from your injuries. Even if you don't die, you will only be a cripple in the future. Now, there are only two paths in front of you. Swim across the Lake of Vexation to the other side and be reborn in Nirvana, or... Before the Xing deity could finish her sentence, there was a splash as Xiao jumped into the lake. Strangely enough, the lake water looked clear and translucent like a flawless crystal. One could clearly see the bottom of the lake. It wasn't too deep. However, after Xiao jumped in, no matter how hard he struggled, his body couldn't float on the surface of the water. He kept plummeting. It looked like the lake had no buoyancy at all. No, it should be said that not only did it have no buoyancy, but it was more like an abyss with a terrifying suction force that constantly pulled Zhao's body down. Furthermore, no matter how Xiao struggled, the lake didn't stir at all. There was no sound of water at all. It was dead silent. It's really not a good habit to not wait for someone to finish speaking. The Xing deity looked at Xiao, who was constantly sinking in the lake, and muttered to herself, "Even calamity-grade earth creatures will be entangled by countless invisible wraiths after entering the lake. They will be pulled to the bottom of the lake and eventually die, becoming a part of the lake. Over all these years, only one person has been able to reach the other side. There are no less than 100,000 creatures that have sunk into the lake." Zhouwen originally only wanted to take Ye to the West District, but to his surprise, Li Xian took the initiative to follow Zhouwen to the West District after learning of the news. "Old Zhou, I heard that the very popular female host's home is in this city." Li Xian looked around as he drooled. "Which female host?" Zhouwen asked casually. "The one who hosts the show with Professor Gu. Her name is Su Yi. She's extremely popular now." Li Xian's eyes were still looking around, but it was unknown what he was looking for. Chapter 1437. There weren't many pedestrians on the street. In recent years, Earth's death rate had been terrifyingly high, but the birth rate was pathetically low. Most human cities didn't have many people. However, the population of this city was clearly abnormally low. In such a large city, 1 or 2 people would occasionally pass by in a hurry. Li Xian was very disappointed. "I originally thought that the headquarters of the Federation Freedom Investigation Bureau was in Xinda City. This should be a rather bustling city, but I never expected it to be so desolate. It's indeed a little abnormal. Before coming, I read the news online. Xinda City has a population of 3 to 4 million. It's impossible for there to be so few people. I wonder what happened." Zhouwen was also somewhat puzzled. "Why don't we just ask?" When Li Xian saw a pedestrian pass by on the street in front of him, he flashed to the person's side and took out a huge bill. He extended his hand and waved it in front of the person. "Why are there so few people in Xinda City? Tell me what happened here and this is yours." The person was immediately delighted as he reached out to grab the money in Li Xian's hand. "Let's talk about it first." Li Xian retracted his hand, making the person miss. "Most people moved to New Horse City. Now, the number of people left in Xinda City isn't even a tenth of its original number," the person said as he stared at the bill in Li Xian's hand. "Why did they move away?" Li Xian continued asking. "It's all because of the rumors." The person said something that surprised Zhouwen and Li Xian. This matter had something to do with Pandora's Demon Palace. In the myths and legends of the West District, Pandora was a beautiful woman created by God and given to humans as a gift. At the same time, the gods gave Pandora a Pandora box. Every deity left a gift in the Pandora box. After Pandora came to the human world, she was driven by curiosity and opened the Pandora box. However, there wasn't any real gift from the Pandora box. Instead, curses such as disasters, plagues, and war flew out. Pandora was alarmed as she hurriedly closed the Pandora box, but she closed the hope that the goddess of wisdom Athena had left in the box. From then on, the human world was filled with all sorts of disasters. Disasters, plagues, diseases, and wars constantly broke out. There was no longer a moment of peace. Pandora's Demon Palace was said to be Pandora's residence, but until now, no one had seen what Pandora looked like. But recently, someone had spread the news that Pandora had appeared and would soon open the Pandora's box. The surrounding area would probably become a dead zone. Therefore, many people in Xinda City, who had the ability to move to other human cities, most of them went to the nearby Xinma City, choosing to observe from there. After saying that, the man reached out and snatched the money, turned around and ran. As he ran, he said, "You guys should leave too. It's only a few days before Pandora opens the box. I want to see what that Pandora looks like." "I heard that the mythical Pandora is an extremely beautiful woman," Li Xian said with a smile. However, Zhouwen said with a bitter smile, "Don't mess around. From the myths and legends, Pandora might very well be a calamity-grade existence. Otherwise, there wouldn't be all sorts of legends about disasters." Zhouwen was rather cautious in reality. Even if he now had the strength to fight a calamity still had the possibility of killing him. It wasn't worth risking his life. He originally wanted to enter Pandora's demon palace to take a look, but since there was such a thing, Zhouwen gave up on the idea. After all, 9 out of 10 times he entered dimensional zones in real life, something would happen. Under such circumstances, Zhouwen didn't dare enter. Now, Zhouwen planned on heading outside Pandora's demon palace to take a look. If he could find the tiny palm symbol, he would download a dungeon. If he couldn't, he didn't plan on entering. After all, there were dimensional creatures that were suspected to have the attribute of misfortune elsewhere. There was no need to be hung up on one tree. Li Xian was just saying it. If Zhouwen didn't enter, he didn't really want to take the risk. Zhouwen held Yu's hand as the three of them arrived near the demon palace. They saw a program crew filming at the entrance of the demon palace. "It's Sui." Li Xian's eyes lit up when he saw the host. Zhouwen traced his gaze and saw the female host he often saw on television and the internet. Zhouwen knew her from her face, but he didn't know her name. She looked even prettier in real life than on television. She had long brown hair and fair skin. Her facial features were well-defined and angular, making her look very flirtatious. She had the style of having fiery red lips. She couldn't be described as quiet at all. As the program crew was at the entrance, Zhouwen and company didn't go over. They wanted to wait for them to leave before heading over to avoid trouble. For a media outlet like the Federation Freedom Investigation Bureau, they were very well informed. Zhouwen had previously been in the limelight on the Rubik's Cube rankings. If they saw him, they would definitely come over to take photos. "It's not convenient for you to go over. I'll go take a look first. After all, I'm not a celebrity." Li Xian greeted Zhouwen and walked towards the program crew. Zhouwen looked around and saw that the demon palace was built between 2 mountains. Only the door was exposed and the rest was in the valley. After observing from afar for a while, he discovered a tiny palm symbol on the stone wall beside the door. There really is one. Zhouwen was delighted. He planned on downloading the dungeon after the program crew left. Then, he would figure out the situation of the demon palace in-game before deciding if he wanted to enter. Zhouwen turned to look at Li Xian and saw that he was chatting passionately with Sui. He didn't know how they had managed to strike up a conversation. After a while, Li Xian walked over to him with Sui. "Old Zhou, let me introduce you. This is the hottest female host in the Federation, Sui. Sui. This is my best friend." Before Li Xian could finish his sentence, Sui took the initiative to say, "There shouldn't be anyone in the Federation who doesn't know Mr. Zhou, right? What's more, people like us who do news. Nice to meet you, Mr. Zhou. You are the pride of us humans. Just call me Zhouwen." Zhouwen glanced at Li Xian and blamed him for being a busybody. Why did he bring Sui over for no reason? "Old Zhou, it's like this. I heard from Sui that the matter of Pandora opening the Pandora's box is just a rumor. They are now doing a program to refute it," Li Xian said. "Rumor? Are you sure?" Zhouwen was somewhat surprised. If it was just a rumor, wasn't the power of this rumor a little too strong for it to cause almost everyone in Shinda City to leave? Sui said, "Although I can't be 100% sure and I don't know who spread the rumor, there are clearly traces of a mastermind and hype. It's not news that spread through normal channels. Furthermore, we haven't found the source of the news until now. Previously, we had companions enter the demon palace to record the situation, but they didn't discover anything abnormal in the demon palace. That's strange. What benefits does creating such a rumor benefit the mastermind?" Zhouwen frowned in thought. Chapter 1438. If the two of you are entering the Demon Palace, I wonder if you would be interested in traveling with our program? When Sui saw Zhouwen frown, he immediately said, "Don't worry. We are professional media outlet. Without your consent, we will not publish any news related to this, nor will we take photos or record any recordings." Li Xian looked at Zhouwen and knew from his eyes that he wanted to go. "Sorry, we just came to take a look. We have no intention of entering." Zhouwen still rejected Sui. Although the matter of the Pandora's box being opened might just be a rumor, Zhouwen still didn't want to take the risk. Furthermore, based on his past experience, as long as he entered a dimensional zone, there was a high chance that something would happen. If he followed the program team in, he might end up harming them. Sui was very disappointed. "That's really a pity. We still have to do some filming outside. If the two of you change your mind and want to enter, you are welcome to come over at any time. I can be your guide. I know the environment inside the Demon Palace quite well." With that said, Sui bade farewell and returned to the program team. He didn't do any more lobbying. "We were planning on entering anyway. With such a beauty as a guide, why not? Why should we reject her?" Li Xian was puzzled. "I had planned on entering previously, but now that there's the matter of the Pandora's box, it's best to be careful. I won't enter for the time being." Zhouwen paused before smiling. "Besides, aren't you not allowed to get close to women? No matter how beautiful Sui is, it has nothing to do with you, right?" "What do you mean I can't get close to women?" "That's because I can't stand her. I don't want to get close to women, alright? If I really meet someone suitable, I'm better than you," Li Xian shouted as he jumped. "I don't know if you can do it, but it's best not to enter the Demon Palace for the time being. Let's take a walk nearby." Zhouwen walked towards the Demon Palace's entrance. Since Sui already knew about it, there was no need to avoid it. It was more important to download the dungeon as soon as possible. Sui had probably already informed the program team. Although they could clearly sense that the program team recognized Zhouwen, no one came to disturb them. Zhouwen looked at the door and took pictures everywhere. He took the opportunity to take a picture of the tiny palm symbol and successfully entered the download screen. On the other side, Li Xian had been watching them film the entire time. As he watched, he said regretfully, "Such a beautiful chick is willing to be our tour guide. It's such a pity not to go." Zhouwen put away his phone and ignored Li Xian. He looked at the filming crew. He was only taking a casual look, but he realized that something was amiss. The cameraman who was giving Sui the front shot seemed to be avoiding his gaze. Although it didn't look obvious and it was normal for a cameraman to cover his face with a camera, Zhouwen felt that his actions were a little awkward. Furthermore, the cameraman gave Zhouwen a familiar feeling. After secretly using Truth Listener to observe for a while, Zhouwen immediately realized the problem. The cameraman was actually Lu Yun. Although he had changed his appearance, and even his figure was a little different from before, Zhouwen still recognized him. This was all thanks to his sharp senses. If he hadn't keenly sensed that there was something wrong with the cameraman, he wouldn't have been able to tell that it was Lu Yun if he didn't look carefully. That fellow, Lu Yun, is someone who doesn't get up early without benefits. He changed his appearance to sneak into the program team and deliberately hid from me. What is he trying to do? Zhouwen suddenly thought of something. Don't tell me he was the one who spread the rumors about the Demon Palace? The more Zhouwen thought about it, the more he felt that it was right. Lu Yun definitely wanted to enter the Demon Palace by sneaking into the program team. However, there was something Zhouwen couldn't figure out. The Demon Palace wasn't controlled by a large faction. Anyone could enter. If Lu Yun wanted to enter, he could have entered by himself. Why did he sneak into the program team? Could it be that there's something in the program team that's helpful to him? Zhouwen carefully scanned everyone in the program team. There were a total of more than 10 people in the program team. Apart from the host, director, cameraman, and other staff, There were a few human experts who were in charge of clearing dimensional creatures. Those human experts were only at the mythical stage. He could tell that 3 of them had advanced using mythical fluid. They had obvious characteristics of dimensional creatures, and one of them was likely a contracted guardian. Apart from that, there was a special guest. In fact, he was equivalent to Su Yi's host partner. Zhou wasn't unfamiliar with this person. He was Professor Gu, who often partnered with Su Yi. Zhou watched for a while but didn't discover any problems. What is Lu Yun plotting? Zhou thought for a moment and suddenly said to Li Xian, "Don't you want to go in and take a look? Then tell Su Yi that we want to follow their program team in to take a look." Holy sh*t, old Zhou, it's not easy. You've finally thought it through. Li Xian was overjoyed as he patted Zhou on the shoulder and said, "That's right. Life is just a few decades. That's all there is to it. It's best to have fun while you can. It's useless to think about all that nonsense all day." "Are you going?" "If not, I'll tell him myself," Zhou said. "Don't. I'll tell him. You don't like dealing with people. Leave such troublesome matters to me." Li Xian ran to the program team. After a while, Li Xian walked over with Su Yi and another middle-aged man in a hat. After Li Xian's introduction, Zhou learned that the middle-aged man's name was Ivan. He was the director of the program team. He agreed to let Zhou and Li Xian join the team, but because they had filming work, they could only follow their route after entering. Sometimes they had to stop for filming. It was impossible for them to keep wandering around. After the agreement was made, Zhou, Li Xian, and Yer officially joined the program team. Is this little sister going in too? Although the matter regarding the Pandora's box is only a rumor, the Demon Palace itself is quite dangerous. She's still so young. Su Yi said to Yer. "It's fine. I'll watch over her," Zhou said. "I was overthinking things. With your strength, Mr. Zhou, the dimensional creatures in the Demon Palace naturally can't injure you and this little sister," Su Yi said with a smile. After the filming at the entrance was completed, the group officially entered Pandora's Demon Palace. Behind the door was a large square. As there had been relatively few humans entering the Demon Palace recently, the dimensional creatures in the Demon Palace hadn't been completely wiped out. There were many strange dimensional creatures wandering in the square. Upon seeing Zhou and company enter the Demon Palace, the dimensional creatures immediately rushed forward. One of the mythical humans didn't spend much effort to finish off the dimensional creatures that rushed forward. Zhou had been secretly observing Lu Yun the entire time. He didn't do any tricks and was really like a professional cameraman. He had always been loyal to his job and filmed all the scenes the director needed. Chapter 1439. Pandora's Demon Palace was really quite normal. At the very least, Zhou didn't discover any problems. The dimensional creatures that appeared were all things that Zhou had seen online. There was nothing abnormal about them. The program team did some filming and comparison at places that humans frequented, hoping to prove that the Demon Palace hadn't undergone any abnormalities. Zhou and Li Xian followed them as they filmed. By noon, they had only filmed 3 or 4 places that people frequented. When the program team took a lunch break, Lu Yun, who was disguised as a cameraman, found an opportunity and came to Zhou's side. He said with a smile, "Mr. Zhou, the scenery over there is pretty good. Do you want me to take a picture for you?" When he approached Zhou, he whispered, "Follow me." "All right." Zhou pulled Yer and followed him to the side. After leaving the program team, Lu Yun gritted his teeth and said, "Why are you following me? What do you mean? Why am I following you? Didn't you ask me to come over and take pictures?" Zhou said, pretending to be surprised. "Stop pretending. Hurry up and leave. Don't cause trouble here." Lu Yun was clearly a smart person. He knew that Zhou had definitely recognized him. "Why should I leave? This isn't your home," Zhou said calmly. Lu Yun couldn't do anything to Zhou, so he could only suppress his temper and say, "I'll tell you the truth. Pandora's demon palace is very dangerous now. Pandora's box can be opened at any moment. When the time comes, the entire demon palace will be destroyed. Terrifying calamity creatures will appear. If anything goes wrong, you won't even have a chance to escape." "Were you the one who spread the rumors?" Zhou asked casually. "It's not a rumor. It's true." Lu Yun wore a sincere expression. "Whether it's a rumor or not, I have eyes. After watching for so long, why didn't I notice any signs of Pandora's box opening?" Zhou said unhurriedly. Lu Yun explained earnestly, "Pandora's box is now sealed. Before it is opened, there are naturally no signs. Once it is opened, it will be too late to leave. I spread the news in advance in order to give those ordinary people a chance to escape. Otherwise, when the time comes, the people of Shinda City will die, and ordinary people will have no chance to escape. Since it's so dangerous, why did you come in?" Zhou remained unmoved as he asked him with a smile. "I'm just trying to get rid of the evil for the people. I'm planning to investigate the situation first. If the conditions allow it, I'll find a way to seal it permanently before the magic box is opened." Lu Yun said sincerely, "Junior brother, listen to my advice. Take the child and leave this place quickly. It's fine if you're alone, but I can't watch you bring the child to such a dangerous place to take risk. Eldest senior brother, I didn't expect you to be so broad-minded. You're a chivalrous person who cares about the country and the people. Forget it. As your junior brother, I can't hold you back." "I'll do as you say," Zhou said. "That's right. Bring that punk, Li Xian, along and quickly return to Luoyang." Lu Yun was overjoyed to see that Zhou was so agreeable. "No, what I mean is that we'll do as you say. I'll go with you and see if I can seal the magic box before it is opened," Zhou said. The smile on Lu Yun's face gradually froze. When he heard that, his face turned livid. He pointed at Zhou and said fiercely, "Are you bent on making things difficult for me?" "Yes," Zhou answered with certainty. Lu Yun pointed at Zhou as the expression on his face turned even more ferocious. He shook his finger a few times, looking like he was about to kill, but he suddenly retracted his hand. He forced a smile and said, "Junior brother, we're all fellow disciples. Why make things difficult for us? Go back first. I'll treat you to a feast when I go to Luoyang another day." "I want half," Zhou ignored him and said directly. "What half?" Lu Yun asked with a blank expression. 60%, Zhou said directly. "Junior brother, I really..." Before Lu Yun could finish speaking, Zhou raised the price again. Lu Yun looked at Zhou's lips and knew that he was about to say 7 words. He hurriedly interrupted him and said, "Half is fine, but you have to contribute as well." "How do I contribute?" Zhou asked. Lu Yun looked at the production crew. Seeing that no one was paying attention to them, he lowered his voice and said, "It's true that the magic box has been opened. I didn't lie to you. I released the news because I really wanted to help them. I didn't want them to die without even knowing how they died." Seeing Zhou look at him in disbelief, Lu Yun said helplessly, "All right, I admit that part of the reason I sent them away was for this operation, but I also wanted to save their lives. This is an undeniable fact." "Get to the point," Zhou said impatiently. "Have you heard of the legend of Pandora?" Lu Yun asked. "Isn't that obvious? Hasn't anyone heard of it?" "Even a 3-year-old knows the legend of Pandora's box," Zhou said. "Pandora's box is something that happened in the future. Before Pandora's box, the gods sent some gifts to Pandora. Do you know what they are?" Lu Yun whispered. "I don't know about that." Zhou only knew that there was such a myth, but he didn't know the details. Prometheus stole the fire seed from the sun god and gave it to humans, bringing light to humans. In order to punish humans, the gods used the goddess as a blueprint to create the beautiful woman Pandora. The goddess of love and beauty gave her a captivating perfume. Athena gave her a divine robe. Vulcan gave her ribbons, necklaces, rings, and other divine items. God's emissary gave her the talent of language, making her the most perfect woman in the world. As Lu Yun spoke, he almost drooled. Wiping the corner of his mouth, Lu Yun continued, "Think about it. Those divine robes, ribbons, necklaces, rings, and the like are all true divine items. They aren't the calamities in Pandora's box. According to my guess, Pandora is definitely at the calamity grade. Then, the items on her must also be good items at the calamity grade. If we can get them all back." "That's not right. You want to kill a calamity grade creature?" Zhou felt that there was something wrong with Lu Yun's words. "It's not killing, it's stealing," Lu Yun corrected. "The items on a calamity creature are one with her. How can you steal them?" Zhou felt that it was unreliable. That might not be the case. If it were an ordinary calamity creature, that might be the case. However, Pandora is different. She's just a tool that was created. Those things were given to her by the gods, not things that she originally had. She should be able to steal them, Lu Yun said. Zhou frowned inwardly. He had a nagging feeling that this matter wasn't as simple as Lu Yun made it out to be. "If you want to steal something, do it yourself. Why did you sneak into the production crew?" Zhou asked Lu Yun. Chapter 1440. If you want to reach the temple where Pandora is, you have to follow the production crew, Lu Yun said. "Why?" Zhou looked at Lu Yun in surprise. Lu Yun's spatial teleportation skill wasn't inferior to his. If even Lu Yun couldn't enter, Zhou didn't believe that the production crew could. Lu Yun explained, "The temple where Pandora is has a special defense mechanism. Not anyone can enter as they wish. Even a calamity-grade expert will find it difficult to forcefully enter. There's only one way to enter. Find a suitable person to open the door to Pandora's temple." A suitable person? Zhou roughly guessed something. Lu Yun glanced in the direction of the production crew before explaining in a low voice, "After my research, to enter the temple, I need a woman with a special life providence to open the door. I searched for a long time before I finally found a woman with that special life providence. It's that female host Sui. Only she can open the door to the temple. When the time comes, we can enter and steal something from Pandora." "Your words are too contradictory. Since you haven't entered before, how do you know that Sui's life providence can open the door? Even if Sui can open the door, how do you know that Pandora really has something for you to steal?" Zhou still felt that there were many loopholes in this matter. "Why do you have so many whys? Just tell me if you're doing it or not. If you're not, I'll do it myself. Just don't block my path to riches," Lu Yun said impatiently. "Since it's a cooperation, it's best to make things clear. It's fine if you don't want to cooperate. After all, Li Xian is quite interested in Sui. If he knew, he wouldn't let Sui take the risk, right?" Zhou said with a smile. "Are you trying to burn bridges?" Lu Yun glared at Zhou angrily. "If you want to cooperate, make things clear," Zhou said. Lu Yun pondered for a moment before saying with a bitter smile, "It's not that I don't want to tell you, but I'm afraid that you won't believe me if I tell you. It will be even more troublesome." "How do you know I won't believe you if you don't tell me?" Zhou asked. "I got the information from Jing Daoxian," Lu Yun said directly. "Jing Daoxian?" Zhou immediately had an incredulous thought. "See? I knew you wouldn't believe me." Zhou's expression was too obvious. Lu Yun spread out his hands and said. Zhou pondered in silence. Jing Daoxian might really have been to Pandora Demon Palace before and might really know about Pandora's situation, but why did he tell Lu Yun this? In the past, Jing Daoxian was injured and couldn't go to war. However, now that Jing Daoxian's injuries had healed and he had a companion beast like the Yin-Yang Mirror, why didn't he take the treasures from Pandora himself? Instead, he told Lu Yun about it. "It's not that I don't believe you, but Jing Daoxian is just too unpredictable. Why did he give you that information? Zhou Wen said to Lu Yun. I made a deal with him. As for what the deal is, I can't tell you. What I can tell you is that this information is very reliable. If you believe it, cooperate with me. If you don't believe it, don't stop me from getting my money. After this is over, regardless of whether it succeeds or not, I'll treat you to a sumptuous meal. Lu Yun seemed very confident that the information Jing Daoxian had given him was real. Since Lu Yun had already said so, Zhou Wen naturally didn't ask any further. Alright, let's give it a try. How do you plan on bringing Sui over? Don't tell me you're preparing to kidnap her? Zhou Wen thought for a moment and decided to take a look. Lu Yun was a cautious person. If he wasn't confident, he wouldn't be so confident. Furthermore, Zhou Wen did have some thoughts about Pandora. However, he was different from Lu Yun. Lu Yun wanted the treasures on Pandora, while Zhou Wen was interested in Pandora's box. If it was an item of misfortune, Pandora's box was definitely ranked. If the Pandora's box itself was a dimensional creature, using it to create mythical liquid would likely be of great help to Wang Chan. Of course not. They were going to the temple's entrance to film. However, no one has opened the temple's door before. Sui doesn't know that she can open the temple's door. When the time comes, we just need to create some chaos and push Sui over. When the door opens, we can directly enter. We won't cause any trouble for the production team, Lu Yun explained. Zhou Wen felt that this was feasible, but he felt that if only Sui could open the door, she probably wouldn't be able to escape so easily. The two of them discussed for a while before Lu Yun pretended to take a few photos of Zhou Wen and Yer before returning to the production team. Li Xian was still chatting with Sui and company. Li Xian was talented. It hadn't been long, but he had already become very familiar with the production team. It was as though he was also a staff member of the production team. After resting for a while, the production team began filming again. The dimensional creatures they encountered on the way didn't have the two that Zhou Wen wanted, so he didn't take action. After finding an opportunity, Zhou Wen told Li Xian about his cooperation with Lu Yun. How can that do? Li Xian immediately shouted. Don't shout. Do you want everyone to hear you? Zhou Wen tugged at Li Xian. Seeing that the production team was looking at him, Li Xian hurriedly smiled apologetically, indicating that he was fine. Then, he squatted down and whispered to Zhou Wen, Old Zhou, that Lu Yun isn't reliable. If only Sui can open the door, will she be able to come out after opening it? Zhou Wen also whispered, Of course I know that Sui definitely won't be able to escape so easily, but think about it. This matter came from Jing Daoxian. Even if we stop Lu Yun today and don't let Sui open the door, what about the future? What if Jing Daoxian wants to enter the temple himself? Li Xian was taken aback when he heard that. He said gloomily, Then what should we do? Instead of waiting for things to get out of our control before thinking of a solution, why don't we figure out the situation while we still have control over it? If something really happens to Sui, we can help her. It's better than her being coerced by others to open the door in the future, right? Zhou Wen said. That's true, but isn't it too risky? Li Xian was still a little hesitant. Then marry her and protect her 24/7. Furthermore, you have to confirm if you can beat Jing Daoxian, Zhou Wen said. What do you plan on doing? Li Xian felt that this wasn't a good idea. He didn't have any ideas, so he could only ask for Zhou Wen's opinion. There's no other way. We'll protect Sui and let her in to figure out what's going on inside. We'll resolve this matter completely. On the way, Zhou Wen had already attempted to enter the Pandora Palace dungeon, but strangely, the blood-colored avatar couldn't enter the final Pandora temple. From the looks of it, it was just as Lu Yun had said. One needed a special life providence to open the Pandora temple. Smiley face, smiley face. Chapter 1441. Pandora's demon palace was a large maze. However, for people familiar with the demon palace, as long as they could clear the dimensional creatures in the demon palace, it wouldn't be difficult to traverse it. The only place in the entire demon palace that hadn't been stepped on by humans was Pandora's temple. The glorious palace that resembled a miracle stood in a corner of the demon palace. The walls were engraved with many reliefs regarding miracles. Basically, they were scenes of gods performing miracles and obtaining the worship of humans. On the murals, Zhou discovered carvings that were suspected to be of the sun god, the goddess of love and beauty, the god of forging, the goddess of wisdom, and even the god of the underworld. These sculptures were extremely beautiful. Zhou couldn't help but guess, if the gods really exist, do they really look like this? Hello everyone. I'm the host Sui. It's June now. I'm in front of Pandora's temple. This is the legendary place where Pandora sleeps. Recently, there have been rumors that Pandora will open Pandora's box and cause Shinda City to suffer. Sui stood in front of the temple's door and introduced the temple's current situation. As the cameraman, Lu Yun was the closest to Sui. Seeing that Sui was about to reach the door of Pandora's temple, Zhou exchanged looks and hurriedly approached. They naturally couldn't stand in front of the camera, but at that moment, a strong beam of light suddenly exploded, causing everyone to lose their vision. The strong light was useless against Zhou. Li Xian was already prepared. After his terror transformation, the light was useless against his eyes. The two of them saw Lu Yun rush in front of Sui and push her towards the temple's door. Although Suyi's strength was considered pretty good among ordinary people, having reached the peak of the epic stage, it was nothing compared to an expert like Lu Yun. She didn't even see Lu Yun before she involuntarily lunged at the temple's door. Lu Yun controlled his strength extremely well. When Sui pressed her hands on the door, her hands happened to press down on the two unicorn patterns on the door. Her palm was pierced by the protruding horn, and blood immediately dyed the horn red. Boom! The door produced a dull thud as it slowly opened to the sides. Li Xian rushed over to pull Sui away. Since the door was already open, she was useless. Lu Yun and Jing Daoxian wouldn't cause trouble for her again. When Li Xian charged over, Lu Yun also charged at Sui. Zhou seemed to sense something as he flashed to Suyi's side with Ye. The three of them grabbed Suyi's body. In the next second, a beam of light shot out from the open door. In an instant, Sui and the other four beside her disappeared. The door to the temple closed with a rumble. Bang! Bang! The four of them fell to the ground one after another. Li Xian got up and grabbed Lu Yun's collar. He said angrily, "You thief, how dare you lie to us?" Lu Yun only said that Sui could open the door, but he didn't say that the door would close by itself. Furthermore, it was obvious that only by following Sui could he enter. If they hadn't wanted to save Sui and reached her side in time, they would have been left behind by Lu Yun. "Don't be agitated. I didn't know this would happen either," Lu Yun explained without any sincerity. What do you want?" Sui looked at them in panic. His palms were still bleeding and his face was pale. It was obvious that he was frightened. "Sui, old Zhou and I have no ill intentions." Just as Li Xian was about to say something, he heard a rumble. The few of them jumped in fright as they couldn't help but look in the direction of the rumble. When they saw it, they were alarmed. The place where they landed was a huge garden. The garden was circular, and in the middle was a circular square. There were paths in the garden that separated flower beds. However, the flowers in the flower beds looked somewhat terrifying. There were sparse flowering trees planted in the flower beds, but they didn't even have a single leaf. The branches were twisted like venomous snakes, and they were a withered gray. There was only one flower growing on each flowering tree. They were different from ordinary flowers. The flowers didn't bloom towards the sky, but hung down to the ground. Furthermore, their petals were converged together. What was even more bizarre was the appearance of those flowers. From afar, they looked like people who had been hanged on trees. The rumbling sound came from the top of the garden. It was the dome of the palace. It was a standard dome with layers of statues. In the middle of the dome hung a gorgeous crystal lamp. There were many lamps of all sizes on the crystal lamp, like blobs of flowers. The entire crystal lamp had a diameter of more than 10 meters. The flower-like lamps lit up at that moment. The sound from before likely came from the crystal lamp, but they didn't see anything on the crystal lamp that could produce such a loud sound. Lu Yun looked up for a while and suddenly said with a frown, "There seems to be something wrong with that crystal lamp. Don't play tricks." Li Xian still held onto Lu Yun. "Oldly, let him go. Protect Su Yi." Zhou Wen knew that it was useless for Li Xian to grab Lu Yun. With Lu Yun's spatial teleportation ability, it was useless for Li Xian to grab him. Li Xian glared at Lu Yun before letting go and retreating to Su Yi's side. However, Su Yi took a step back and maintained a certain distance from Li Xian. She no longer trusted anyone. No matter how she looked at it, Li Xian, Zhou Wen, and Lu Yun were in cahoot. Li Xian was somewhat helpless. It was useless to explain anything now. All he could do was stand beside Su Yi without a word. "Look at the flames of the crystal lamp," Lu Yun said as he adjusted his clothes and pointed at the crystal lamp. "What's wrong with the flames?" Li Xian asked coldly. "Don't you feel that those flames are alive?" Lu Yun said with an odd expression. "Alive." Li Xian and Zhou Wen carefully looked at the flames. Li Xian's eyesight was average, so he didn't notice any problems. However, Zhou Wen's eyesight was extraordinary. After taking a careful look, he realized that there was something wrong with the flames. The flames were emitted by a tiny crystal bead inside the lamp. At first glance, the tiny crystal bead didn't look problematic. It was a transparent, colorless crystal bead the size of a fist. However, after Zhou Wen carefully scanned it, he realized that it wasn't a crystal bead, but a crystal creature that had shrunk into a ball. As their bodies were like flawless, transparent crystals, they didn't have any impurities or colors. Therefore, when they shrunk into a ball, it was almost impossible to tell them apart with the naked eye. Zhou Wen was still watching when he heard another rumble. The huge crystal lamp began to move, as though it was reassembling itself like building blocks. It caused the crystal lamp's shape to undergo a huge change, and in the blink of an eye, it became completely different. Chapter 1442. 9. Li Xian protected Su Yi as he read out in puzzlement. After the crystal lamp changed, it turned into the shape of the number 9 and continued hanging under the dome. "It might also be a 6, Lu Yun said from the other side. Zhou Wen didn't care if it was a 9 or a 6. He looked around and didn't find the door he had come from. When he wanted to teleport out, he realized that the space in the temple was isolated. Unless he found the door he had entered from, it was impossible for him to leave. However, there was only this garden in this palace. There was no path that led anywhere else. "Eldest senior brother, where's Pandora?" Zhou Wen asked Lu Yun. Lu Yun scratched his head and said gloomily, "Jing Daoxian only said that Pandora is in the temple, but he didn't say where. I'm not too sure either." With that said, Lu Yun's gaze landed on the flowers that looked like hanged ghosts. "Do you think Pandora might be inside those flowers? Those flowers aren't small, and they look like people. It shouldn't be a problem to hide a person inside, right? I've only heard that Pandora was made from soil by God, but I've never heard that she was born from flowers," Li Xian said. "It's best not to touch those flowers." Zhou Wen had already used Truth Listener to scan the flowers, but he couldn't see the situation inside. Furthermore, the flowers that looked like hanged ghosts gave him a sense of danger. "Why did you capture me?" Sui couldn't help but ask. "Miss Su, Zhou Wen and I have absolutely no ill intentions towards you. As for whether he has any ill intentions towards you, we don't know," Li Xian said as he glanced at Lu Yun. "What are you saying? Am I the kind of person who would hurt a woman?" Lu Yun shouted unhappily. Yes, Zhou Wen and Li Xian answered affirmatively at the same time. Lu Yun said angrily, "You can't blame me for this. After all, we are fellow students from the same college, right? Zhou Wen, the two of us were taught by the same teacher. I'm your eldest senior brother after all. Why are you always staring at me? It's only right that I want to shake you off, right? I'm used to it. There's meat to eat by following you," Zhou Wen said calmly. Upon hearing Zhou Wen's answer, Lu Yun had the urge to vomit blood. He said hatefully, "Anyway, you were the ones who insisted on coming. Don't blame anyone if anything happens. As for Great Host Su, I really mean you no harm. Only you can open this door, and only you can go in and out. After we get our things, we'll have to trouble you to bring us out. Don't worry, even if I kill those two guys, I won't let you suffer any harm. It's those two shameless fellows. Miss Su, you have to be careful. Don't help them count the money after being sold. Miss Su, the two of us have no ill intentions towards you. We were afraid that you would be harmed by him, so we followed him in," Li Xian hurriedly said. "What do you mean by afraid of being harmed by me? If you really wanted to be a good person, you could have stopped them from outside. All right, cut it out. Let's figure out the situation here first." Zhou Wen interrupted their argument. Zhou Wen had already carefully scanned the situation in the garden. There were no doors or exits, only flower beds and crystal lamp. "Do any of you know the origins of these flowering trees and crystal lamps? Or are they related to myths and legends?" Zhou Wen asked as he sized up the flowering trees. There were only so many things in the garden. Be it finding a way out or finding Pandora or the Pandora box, they could only start from them. Lu Yun scratched his head and said, "Before I came, I studied a lot of information related to Pandora. The gods have indeed bestowed many things upon her, but there don't seem to be any related flowers, nor are there any legends regarding the crystal chandelier." Li Xian also said, "I only know that Pandora has another name, Anastora. It means a woman who gives gift. I thought that since her name has the word do in it, wouldn't it be related to flowers? Could it be that Pandora is actually those flowers, and the Pandora box is inside the flowers? Forget it. The word duo is a transliteration, all right? It has nothing to do with flowers," Lu Yun said with a curl of his lips. Seeing that the two of them were about to fight again, Su Yi suddenly said, "Do you know who Pandora's daughter is?" The few of them were taken aback as they looked at Su Yi. Su Yi was indeed a little afraid in the beginning, but now, he didn't seem to be afraid. He was holding his phone and taking pictures of the garden from all angles. At this moment, he didn't forget his job. His professionalism was perfect. "I don't know." Seeing Su Yi look over, the few of them shook their heads. They were here to find Pandora. Who cared who her daughter was? They really didn't care. Su Yi smiled and said, "According to what I know, Pandora's daughter is called Pila. She later married Dukalion." The few of them were somewhat confused. These names were just too unfamiliar. They had never heard of them before. They didn't know what Su Yi's sudden mention of this had to do with their current situation. Seeing their blank expressions, Su Yi felt very good. He smiled and said, "You might not have heard of these two names, but you should have heard of Noah's Ark, right? I've heard of that. It's the person who survived the flood, right? However, Noah should be a legendary figure of another pantheon, right? What does it have to do with Pandora?" Lu Yun said. Su Yi said, "The myth of the flood appears in many pantheons. Pila and Dukalion are the Noah of Pandora's pantheon. After Pandora opened Pandora's box, humans suffered all kinds of disasters. In the end, the flood nearly drowned the entire world. Only Pila and Dukalion created the Ark and escaped the disaster of the flood. In order to revive humanity, Pila and Dukalion had to find the bone of Mother Earth. In the end, they discovered that the so-called bone of Mother Earth was actually a type of crystal. When Zhou Wen and company heard that, they couldn't help but cast their gazes at the crystal chandelier above them. The crystal chandelier was completely made of crystals. Furthermore, Zhou had already discovered that the crystal chandelier was actually a living creature. Then, the crystal chandelier was very likely the bone of Mother Earth that Su-Yi mentioned. Su-Yi continued, after Deucalion threw out the bone of Mother Gaia, the bone of Mother Gaia became a man. The bone of Mother Gaia that Pila threw out became a woman. These people became the ancestors of the ancient Greek. Boom! As Su-Yi spoke, he heard another loud bang. The crystal chandelier above their heads changed again as its shape rapidly changed. This time, Zhou and company saw it clearly. It was in the shape of an 8. This way they could confirm that the previous shape was a 9 and not a 6. Zhou expression was somewhat odd. According to what he knew, anything related to the flood wasn't simple. Chapter 1443. Don't tell me this thing is a countdown? What will happen if this thing returns to 0? Li Xian said as he looked at the 8-shaped crystal lamp. Is there any record of these numbers in Deucalion's myths and legends? Lu Yun asked Su-Yi. Su-Yi wore a blank expression as he shook his head and said, I've never heard of it. She had always felt that the crystal lamp was the legendary bone of Mother Earth, but she had never heard of Mother Earth's bone having so many tricks. She vaguely felt that something was amiss. Regardless of whether the crystal lamp is Mother Earth bone or not, we still have to settle this quickly. The change in the crystal lamp's numbers gives me an ominous feeling, Zhou said. Then let me give it a try. Perhaps that crystal lamp is the key. As Li Xian spoke, he wanted to transform into his terror form and charge at the crystal lamp. Now isn't the time to risk our lives. Zhou stopped Li Xian and summoned a golden battle god. Now, Zhou had 2 golden battle gods on him. The 5 golden battle gods that had previously dropped had all been given to Enxing. These 2 had dropped later, and the model was the same as before. He didn't have 6 golden battle gods of different models. Eldest senior brother, do you have anything to say? Zhou asked Lu Yun before ordering the golden battle god to fire. There's no other way now. We can only give it a try, Lu Yun said through gritted teeth. All right. Without any hesitation, Zhou ordered the golden battle god to open fire. However, the target wasn't the crystal lamp, but the flower on a flower tree. One explosive bullet after another hit the flower that resembled a hanged ghost. All they heard was a dull thud, like the sound of leather being pierced through, but there was no explosion. After the bullets entered the flower, they seemed to vanish. If not for the bullet holes left on the petals, Zhou would have suspected if they had hit it. A terror-grade explosive bullet had the destructive power to collapse a building. It was truly surprising that a few consecutive shots failed to blast the flower that was as tall as a person. The few of them stared at the flower nervously. Li Xian shielded Su-Yi behind him, while Zhou carried Yer and summoned the death-reporting crow. Although this fellow's level was very low, it might be useful. Ga. Quack. The moment the crow appeared, it landed on Zhou head and let out an ear-piercing cry. Why did you make such a thing? It's so noisy, Lu Yun said unhappily, startled by the shout. Before Zhou could explain, he heard a popping sound coming from the flower. White smoke spewed out from the bullet hole as though water was boiling inside. Be careful of the gas. Don't be poisoned, Lu Yun said as he retreated. He even stuffed a few pills into his mouth. Zhou also summoned a few detoxification pill essences and gave them to Li Xian and Su-Yi. Although they were only at the epic stage, they might be of some use. However, the white smoke wasn't poisonous. Zhou summoned his companion beasts to test it, but there were no signs of poisoning. As the white gas spewed out, the flower gradually shriveled like a deflated balloon. However, the flower wasn't empty. After the petals collapsed, they stuck to something. Soon, all the petals stuck to the thing and tightly wrapped around it. If it looked like a hanged ghost before, it now looked like a mummy. The thing inside the petals was a shriveled human figure. There's really someone inside the flower. Could it be Pandora? Li Xian said. Even if there's really Pandora, there can only be one. There are at least a dozen flowers in this garden, right? How could it be such a coincidence that a random shot hit Pandora? Lu Yun clearly disagreed with Li Xian's guess. Bam! As the two of them spoke, the flower broke from the flower branch. The mummy-like thing wrapped in petals fell and landed in the garden. What was even more terrifying was that the thing was really like a mummy, twisting its body and wobbling towards them. Bam! 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 The golden battle god fired randomly again. After the bullets pierced through the petals and entered its body, they still didn't explode. There was still the dull sound of defeat. The golden battle god's bullets failed to stop it. Despite withstanding the explosive bullets, the thing still staggered out of the flower bed and walked towards the golden battle god. Li Xian and Lu Yun were secretly alarmed. They had seen the golden battle god's strength many times. Although it wasn't a top terrorgrade, the destructive power of the explosive bullets was definitely top-notch. That thing could withstand the explosive bullets as though nothing had happened. Its strength was at least at the top terrorgrade. The few of them subconsciously retreated because they didn't know what kind of power it had. No one dared to take the risk at this moment. Seeing that the golden battle god was basically useless, Zhou Wen made it transform into a revolver and land it in his hand. Bam! Zhou Wen held the golden revolver and fired at the thing. Zhou Wen's shot was augmented with his essence energy, increasing the strength of the bullet significantly. When it hit the thing, it immediately took a few steps back. However, it only retreated. After the bullet's strength was dissipated, it walked towards Zhou Wen again. Watch me. Seeing that the thing was only walking forward without fighting back, Li Xian summoned an ice silkworm. The ice silkworm actually grew 2 pairs of transparent wings. It flapped its wings and flew above the thing. It opened its mouth and spat out a blob of ice gas that enveloped the thing's body. Li Xian wanted to use the ice silkworm's freezing power to freeze the thing. Even if he couldn't freeze it, he could still use it to slow it down. However, the scene he imagined didn't happen. The thing actually walked out of the ice fog. Although there was frost on the petals, it failed to freeze it. Lu Yun also secretly shot out a few poisonous needles. The poisonous needles silently pierced through the petals, but they still failed to affect the thing's movements. What the hell is that? Could it really be an undying body? Lu Yun's expression changed when he saw that the poisonous needles were useless. He retreated even faster. The 3 of them used many means to attack the thing, but none of them had any effect. It was as though it really had an undying body. Junior brother, you are the strongest here. I'll leave this thing to you. I'll think of a solution. Lu Yun quickly retreated. However, Zhou Wen had no intention of retreating. He stood there and sized up the thing in puzzlement. Chapter 1444. The Death Crow only reported the bad news and not the good news. It was the polar opposite of a magpie. However, the Death Crow's ability was very useful. Zhou Wen had been thinking of a way to raise the Death Crow's level. Unfortunately, as it didn't have any evolvable stats, Zhou Wen failed to raise its level by even 1 despite thinking of many ways. He estimated that he could only rely on the Samsara Stone to advance to a higher level in the future. However, the drop rate of something like the Samsara Stone was just too low. Zhou Wen had only managed to drop one, and it had already been used. However, even if it didn't advance in level, it still looked useful. Zhou Wen had summoned it to see if its ability was useful. When the Death Crow cried, Zhou Wen knew that it was still useful. To Zhou Wen's puzzlement, the Death Crow wasn't crying at the thing that was charging at him. It was clearly crying in the direction of the other flowering trees. That's strange. Since it's called a morning crow, it's obviously telling me that this thing shouldn't be a threat. But from the looks of it, it doesn't look like it's not a threat. Zhou Wen shot a few more times, blasting a few more holes in the petals around the thing, but he still failed to stop it. Seeing that the thing had already rushed in front of Zhou Wen, Zhou was considering if he should retreat when he suddenly saw it fall down with a thud, pouncing in front of him. After it fell, the petals on the outside automatically fell off, revealing what was inside. The fiery red light was blinding. The few of them widened their eyes as they saw a gorgeous golden red robe inside. Furthermore, it was a woman's. Could this be the legendary robe bestowed upon Pandora by the gods? Legend has it that the robe was given to Pandora by the goddess of wisdom, and there are also legends that it was given to Pandora by Fire God. From the looks of this robe, it seems more likely that it was given to Fire God. As expected of someone who dabbled in news, Su-yi immediately thought of what it was. While Zhou was still puzzled, the robe automatically flew up and gently landed on him. Zhou reached out to catch it as the robe landed on his arm. Then, it transformed into thousands of fire threads that fused into his body, forming a flame-shaped golden tattoo on his body before gradually vanishing. "Old Zhou, are you alright?" Li Xian hurriedly asked. "It's fine. This thing seems to be a companion beast." Zhou sensed the information from the item and nearly laughed out loud. It was called the Vulcan Golden Silk Robe. It was actually a calamity-grade companion beast. Li Xian wanted to ask what level it was, but when he glanced at Lu Yun and Su-yi, he swallowed the words that were at the tip of his tongue. Lu Yun was quick-witted. He immediately charged towards one of the trees without hesitation. Anyone could tell that the flowers on the trees were the treasures that the gods had bestowed upon Pandora. If they could snatch one more, they would be making a profit. "Lu Yun, don't act recklessly." Li Xian reacted and wanted to stop Lu Yun, but it was already too late. Although Li Xian's movement technique wasn't bad, it was much inferior to Lu Yun's teleportation. As he spoke, Lu Yun had already arrived in front of a flowering tree. As he reached out to grab the flowers, he said, "I've found it. Everyone will rely on their own abilities. Whoever gets it will get it." Lu Yun was afraid that Zhou would split the loot according to the number of people. He was alone, while Zhou and Li Xian were two. Wouldn't that mean that he would have to take 2/3 of the loot? He might as well take the initiative and gain as much as he could. With his hands of a godly thief, even Zhou might not be able to snatch it from him. "Old Zhou, quickly stop him. This fellow's hands are very fast. He'll snatch all the things later," Li Xian said anxiously. "There's no rush. Let's take a look first." Zhou had no intention of stopping him. This was because the flower that Lu Yun was touching was one of the few flowering trees that the crows caught at. Now, Zhou wanted to know if the crow's report was accurate or not. However, Zhou secretly condensed the power of human emperor. If Lu Yun was really in danger, he still had to help him. Lu Yun's face was filled with excitement as he reached into the flower to grab the treasure. However, just as his palm reached in, he suddenly let out a strange cry and retracted his palm. The hand that Lu Yun had retracted had turned completely black, as though it had been dyed with ink. There was even a black gas emitting from it. No matter how Lu Yun shook it, he couldn't shake off the black gas. Soon, the black gas on Lu Yun's hand rapidly decreased. However, the black gas wasn't removed. Instead, it seeped into Lu Yun's body. In just a moment, the black gas on Lu Yun's hand disappeared, but his forehead looked a little black, as though there were dark clouds enveloping it. "Eldest senior brother, are you alright?" Zhou looked at Lu Yun's forehead and felt a sense of déjà vu. Holy sh*t, this is a curse. That's not right. Why did you only get the fire god robe? It's a curse when I touch it. Lu Yun looked at his face in the mirror and immediately, his face turned green as he screamed. "Eldest senior brother, it has to happen eventually. Don't force it when it doesn't." "This thing can't be forced," Zhou said as he shot at another flower. After the flower was struck, white gas spewed out and quickly shriveled. However, this time, it didn't turn into a human shape. After shriveling, it turned into a ribbon. The flower fell from the tree and automatically flew in front of Zhou. The dried petals on it fell and a headband floated towards Zhou. Zhou reached out and grabbed it. The headband automatically landed in his hand before turning into wisps of light that fused into Zhou's body, forming a new tattoo. Another calamity-grade companion beast. Don't tell me these are all calamity-grade companion beasts? Zhou sensed the information from the headband and was pleasantly surprised. If they were all calamity-grade companion beasts, he would really be rich. So that's how it is. I can't use my hands to take it. I understand. Lu Yun's nose was bleeding from the curse. He summoned a dart and shot it at one of the flowers. Zhou originally thought that since they had agreed to split it 50-50, he couldn't let his eldest senior brother return empty-handed. He would let him take as much as he could. It was unknown if it was because of the curse from before or if Lu Yun's luck wasn't good, but his dart hit a flower tree that the death-reporting crow had caught at. The flower was pierced by the dart. Indeed, just like Zhou's previous 2 times, the flower shriveled and automatically broke off as it flew towards Lu Yun. Just as Lu Yun was about to grab the treasure, he saw a gray gas fly out from inside and envelop his head. It was so fast that he couldn't dodge at all. Originally, Lu Yun's glabella was black, but now, his face had turned gray. He looked almost the same color as the corpse. Chapter 1445. My head feels a little dizzy. Lu Yun felt dizzy as his legs went limp. He couldn't stand steadily. Watermark advertisement test. Just as Zhou was about to say something, he heard another boom. The crystal lamp above him turned into a 7. Zhou and Li Xian exchanged looks as their expressions turned solemn. As they didn't know what the crystal lamp's countdown meant, it was difficult for them to come up with a countermeasure in advance. Let's deal with those flower trees first. Zhou held the golden revolver and shot at the flowers that the death-reporting crow hadn't called. A few bullets pierced through the flowers. Lu Yun was a little dizzy from the curse. He was still having a nosebleed, so he couldn't be bothered with snatching anything else. The few flowers fell and transformed into different shapes as they flew towards Zhou. One of them looked like a necklace, while another looked like a ring. He couldn't tell what the other 4 were. Their shapes were rather strange. The first to fall was a flower that Zhou couldn't tell what it was. After the petals fell, there was a stream of water that resembled a clear spring. When the water came into contact with Zhou's body, it immediately drilled into his body before spreading throughout his body. Zhou felt as though all his cells had been cleansed by holy water as they emitted astonishing vitality. Is this something that enhances my physique? Zhou immediately realized that this wasn't a companion beast, but something that strengthened his physique. Even without looking at the game stats, he could sense that his physique had been greatly improved. Following that, the necklace and ring flew out of the petals and transformed into wisps of light that left a tattoo on Zhou's body. Another 2 calamity-grade companion beasts. Zhou nearly cried out in happiness. These were calamity-grade companion beasts, not cabbages that could be found anywhere. He had obtained 4 calamity-grade companion beasts in one go. He reckoned that all the calamity-grade companion beasts on Earth added up together probably didn't have as many as he did. Just as Zhou was feeling excited, the remaining 3 flowers opened one by one. The items inside flew towards him. The 3 items were a blob of white gas, a crystal sheet, and a water droplet. Could it be that those things strengthen the 3 attributes of essence, speed, and strength? The water from before had strengthened his physique. Now there were 3 unknown items. Zhou felt that it was very likely to strengthen the other 3 stats. While Zhou was still in thought, the 3 items had already landed on him and fused into his body. However, to Zhou's surprise, after the 3 items fused into his body, his primordial energy, strength, and speed didn't increase, nor did he obtain any companion beasts. It made Zhou feel some strange characteristics appear on his body. After the water droplet fused with his body, it immediately produced a strange fragrance. Zhou only felt that the fragrance smelled better. It was fragrant but not overpowering. It was thick but not greasy, but he didn't know what it was for. After the crystal slice entered his body, it immediately transformed into two strange forces that flowed into his eyes. Zhou felt his eyes turn a little cool, but his vision didn't improve. The blob of white gas was the strangest. After it entered Zhou's body, it quickly fused with his body and vanished without a trace. Zhou didn't feel any changes in his body. Holy sh*t. Old Zhou. Impressive. Just as Zhou was wondering what the three items were for, he heard Li Xian exclaim. What's amazing? Zhou looked at Li Xian. Old Zhou, why do you suddenly seem to have become beautiful? Those eyes seem to be seductive. If you were a woman, perhaps I would marry you, Li Xian said as he gulped. What nonsense are you talking about? Zhou suddenly realized that something was amiss. This was because Su Yi and the cursed Lu Yun were staring at him intently. Their gazes were like perverts who had seen a beauty, giving Zhou a fright. No good. Zhou cried out involuntarily. He immediately took out a mirror from the chaos space and looked at himself. At first glance, Zhou almost didn't recognize himself in the mirror. His first impression of the person in the mirror was that she had fair skin and a beautiful appearance. Her eyes, in particular, had an indescribable charm that made people unable to help but take a few more glances. Those with poor willpower would find it difficult to move their eyes away from her. Zhou immediately understood what the three items were for. The gifts the gods had given Pandora were for her to seduce Prometheus's brother. Therefore, apart from the precious divine artifacts, the gods had also given her gifts such as temptation, fragrance, wisdom, curiosity, and so on. Zhou had already guessed that the drop of water was definitely the goddess of love and beauty's aphrodisiac perfume. The crystal slice likely gave his eyes some special charm. Although he couldn't figure out what the white gas was, it definitely had some special effects. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have been greedy. Zhou regretted it. It was impossible to get those items out now. On the other side, the way Su Yi and Lu Yun looked at Zhou left him shuddering. Thankfully, Li Xian was rather special to begin with. The primordial energy art he cultivated was also rather special, so he wasn't too affected. He only felt that Zhou had become good-looking. Boom! The crystal lamp changed again. It had already turned into the number 6. Lu Yun, do you know what this crystal lamp is? Zhou didn't believe Lu Yun's words. Zhou didn't believe that he had spent so much effort and means to enter Pandora without knowing anything and just relying on Jing Daoxian's one-sided story. Lu Yun was already a little dazed from the curse's influence. At that moment, he was also affected by Zhou's fragrance and charm. He stared intently at Zhou and said in a daze, I guess it might be the countdown to the opening of the Pandora box. If I can't stop it before the countdown ends, it's very likely that the Pandora box will be opened. When that happens, everyone will die. Why didn't you say so earlier? Zhou thought for a moment and felt that there was no need to ask this question. Hence, he quickly asked, do you know how to stop the crystal lamp's countdown? I don't. Lu Yun shook his head and looked at Zhou with an increasingly infatuated gaze. He then added, Junior brother, don't worry. Even if I die, I'll protect you. Zhou felt goosebumps all over his body when he heard that. He had the urge to blow his head off on the spot. Me too. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I'll protect you. Su Yi looked at Zhou in a daze. Holy sh*t, old Zhou, when did you learn charm arts? Even men are charmed? Li Xian was dumbfounded as he watched from the side. He realized the problem with Zhou. It's all because of those things. Let's not talk about this. We have to quickly think of a way to stop the countdown. Zhou felt bitter. Chapter 1446. Why don't we try and see if we can destroy this crystal lamp? Li Xian suggested. Don't touch the crystal lamp first. I'll think of another solution. Zhou Wen instinctively felt that the crystal lamp was too dangerous. Unless absolutely necessary, he wasn't willing to touch it. However, the flowers on the flower tree that weren't dangerous had been taken down by Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen originally thought that the crystal lamp would stop counting down if he took everything. From the looks of it, that wasn't the case. At the very least, it was useless to just take benefit. In theory, the gifts bestowed by the gods to Pandora actually include those curses, right? If I don't differentiate between good and bad and take down all the flowers, will I be able to stop the crystal lamp's countdown? Zhou Wen thought to himself. With Truth Listener around, he wasn't afraid of curses. Even if he opened the cursed flowers, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. After weighing the pros and cons, Zhou Wen didn't hesitate to shoot down a flower that the death crow had cried at. The flower fell and flew towards Zhou Wen. The thing inside was a blob of red fog. After it came out, it immediately landed on Zhou Wen, preventing him from dodging. It's indeed a curse. Zhou Wen felt Truth Listener in his ear constantly heat up as it frantically converted a large amount of essence energy. It was obvious that the curse was very high level. Although the curse had been resolved by Truth Listener, Zhou Wen didn't dare be careless. He didn't dare shoot down all the remaining flowers at once. If the flowers weren't all curses and a few terrifying dimensional creatures appeared, it would be troublesome. Now that they couldn't leave and there was a countdown, any mistake could cost them their lives. Zhou Wen was already used to it. After all, every time he entered an unknown dimensional zone, it wouldn't be easy. It was more important to resolve the problem. Now, I can only hope that there aren't any Hell-grade calamity creatures in Pandora. Zhou Wen had considered it before entering. The legendary Pandora's combat strength wasn't strong. It was just a tool created by the gods, so there shouldn't be any powerful dimensional creatures here. The flowers were destroyed by Zhou Wen one after another, and all sorts of curses came out. No matter how fast he was or how he teleported, he would definitely be hit as long as he was in the garden. Therefore, when Zhou Wen saw that it was a curse, he didn't dodge. He allowed the curse to land on him before being resolved by Truth Listener's power. Bang! Another flower fell, but this time, the flower that fell was different from the previous ones. After the petals shrank, a human shape appeared. Zhou Wen's heart palpitated as he hurriedly said to Li Xian and company, "Be careful. The item this time is a little different." "I'll protect you." Lu Yun and Su Yi jumped out almost at the same time. They jumped in front of Zhou Wen, one on the left and one on the right. They were prepared to risk their lives for Zhou Wen and fight to the last drop of blood. "Protect your sister." Zhou Wen delivered 2 knife-hand strikes and knocked Su Yi and Lu Yun unconscious before throwing them into the chaos space. Su Yi was bewitched because his cultivation level was too low. Lu Yun was affected by the curse first. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been bewitched so easily. After resolving the 2 troubles, Zhou Wen brought Ye into the chaos space to prevent her from being injured. Banana Fairy and Demonic Neonate were summoned. The funeral raven was still standing on Zhou Wen's head as it screeched at the flower that had shrunk into a human form, as though it was about to cry out its windpipe. Zhou Wen unsummoned it. He already knew that there was danger, so it was useless to let it stay outside. It was annoying. Banana Fairy floated beside Zhou Wen. Demonic Neonate ran to a corner of the garden and didn't stand with Zhou Wen. Li Xian had already entered his terror form. His body looked like it was formed from data streams. The Planet Devourer was also summoned by him and appeared in the form of a glove. Zhou Wen didn't dare summon Tai Sui at this moment. If there were any side effects, he wouldn't even know how he died. He activated the minor Heavenly Cycle Annihilation array just in case. The human-shaped flower walked over step by step. The petals on its body gradually withered and peeled off, gradually revealing the figure of a woman. The woman was dressed in a gorgeous Vulcan gold silk robe. Her head was tied with a hair band that resembled cloud brocade. The necklace around her neck and the ring on her hand shimmered. Her entire body emitted an alluring charm. There was a heart-wrenching fragrance lingering around her body. Before one could see her face clearly, they already felt intoxicated by the fragrance. When the petals that covered her face fell, even Zhou couldn't help but be attracted by her. He almost couldn't move his gaze away from her. He found it unbelievable that there was a woman in this world who could be so beautiful. Zhou hated his limited vocabulary for being unable to describe her beauty. If he had to describe her, Zhou felt that this woman's beauty should be enough to make an old smoker quit smoking. As long as he saw this woman, he wouldn't want to smoke again. Holy sh*t, old Zhou, when did you have a twin sister? Li Xian looked at the woman and then at Zhou as he gaped in surprise. It wasn't that Zhou looked like that woman, but that the scent on their bodies was very similar to that charm. F*ck, you're the one who's a twin with her, Zhou cursed, but he was secretly surprised. If nothing went wrong, this woman was very likely the legendary Pandora. However, even if she was Pandora, Zhou had already taken away the gift bestowed by the gods. Why did she still have another set? Could it be that the gods are so generous to give two sets of gifts? I don't think the gods are that generous. Could it be that one of them is fake? Zhou suspected. He wanted to summon the 4 calamity companion beasts he had obtained to see if there was a problem, but the moment he tried, Zhou expression changed. He couldn't summon the companion beasts he had contracted. Could it be for real? Zhou immediately felt depressed. He had only had such a thought and didn't really think that they were fake. After all, fakes shouldn't be able to contract. Furthermore, after the contract, the companion beasts gave him feedback that they were indeed at the calamity grade. Even now, the feedback from the 4 companion beasts was still at the calamity grade, but for some reason, he couldn't summon them. Boom! The crystal lamp changed again. It had now turned into the shape of the number 5. As for the woman suspected to be Pandora, the petals on her body had completely fallen off. Her eyes opened, and the instant Zhou saw her eyes, he felt the entire world seem to fall. Now, Zhou seemed to understand why Epimetheus would fall out with his brother for her in the legends. Chapter 1447. Zhou had the urge to fly into a flame and sacrifice everything for the woman. He didn't care even if he had to die a horrible death. Thankfully, his willpower was very strong to begin with. He immediately sensed that something was amiss. He focused and severed his thoughts, forcefully preventing himself from being tempted. Zhou could clearly sense that Pandora's attraction wasn't just from her fragrance, eyes, and beauty. It was also a special skill. Even with Zhou's willpower, he felt a considerable amount of pressure. Only by focusing his mind could he control his mind. Recalling that Li Xian was still by the side, Zhou thought to himself, that fellow Li Xian is so lustful. Don't be attracted by Pandora. Zhou was somewhat worried as he turned to look at Li Xian. He was greatly surprised. A pervert like Li Xian didn't seem to be affected much. Although he was also looking at Pandora, his eyes were still clear. He didn't look like he had been tempted. Are you all right? Zhou was afraid that he had seen wrongly and asked directly. With Li Xian's personality, Zhou found it unbelievable that he hadn't pounced on Pandora. She hasn't rushed over yet. What can happen to me? Li Xian said in puzzlement. Don't you think she's very beautiful? Zhou looked at Li Xian's situation and knew that he wasn't affected by Pandora's temptation at all. He was even more surprised. She's very beautiful, but no matter how beautiful she is, it's not as important as my life. I can't just pounce on her now, right? Li Xian felt that Zhou's words were too strange. No matter how beautiful a dimensional creature was, it couldn't be eaten, nor could he marry her as a wife. What was there to say? Zhou Wen thought to himself, could it be that a virgin's primordial energy art can prevent such a skill attack? After confirming that Li Xian wasn't affected, Zhou Wen felt a lot more at ease. Since they were going to fight, he decided to strike first. He summoned the golden dual spears and shot at Pandora. Of Zhou Wen's 2 golden spears, one was an explosive bullet and the other was a freezing bullet. Their destructive power wasn't bad at the Terra grade. Pandora didn't dodge. When the bullets hit her Vulcan golden silk robe, layers of flames immediately appeared on the Vulcan golden silk robe. Before the bullets could touch Pandora, they were melted into liquid and then vaporized. The freezing power of the frost bomb was useless in front of the Vulcan clothes. What a powerful fire god robe! As expected of a calamity grade companion beast. Why can't I summon my Vulcan clothes? None of the bullets Zhou Wen shot injured Pandora. Li Xian flashed behind Pandora and slapped the back of Pandora's head with Devourer's palm. Pandora's hairband moved on its own as it wrapped around Li Xian's arm like a snake. Then, it slithered up and bound Li Xian's body tightly. Furthermore, the headband was automatically shrinking, about to snap Li Xian's body. Thankfully, Li Xian's body was almost undying after his terror transformation. After the hairband was tied, Li Xian's damaged body automatically healed. Li Xian, who should have been cut into several pieces by the hairband, remained unscathed after the hairband passed through his body. Die! When Zhou Wen saw that the crystal lamp was counting down to 4, he didn't dare waste any more time. He pulled out the immortal culling sword and slashed at Pandora. Pandora waved her sleeves, and the fiery cloud-like fire god's sleeves met the immortal culling sword. Chi! The powerful defense of the Vulcan clothes was still sliced through by the immortal culling sword. When the blade touched the golden-threaded clothes, it tore through the sleeves. Pandora retreated like a ghost, preventing herself from being struck by the immortal culling sword. Pandora smiled slightly as Zhou Wen immediately felt the terrifying temptation increase greatly. However, it was useless against Zhou Wen. It couldn't shake his willpower. On the other side, Li Xian wasn't affected. The two of them attacked Pandora one after another. After all, Pandora was a calamity-grade existence. Her movement technique and speed were above theirs. With the help of Vulcan clothes, the headband, the necklace, and the ring, Zhou Wen and company didn't have the advantage. Pandora danced like a fairy as her beautiful legs shot out from under her skirt and kicked Li Xian in the abdomen, sending him flying. Bam! Li Xian slammed into the wall like a cannonball. His flesh and bones were severely deformed, almost turning into a pancake. However, when Li Xian broke free from the wall, his body rapidly recovered. By the time he landed, his body had completely returned to normal as he charged at Pandora again. Zhou Wen pushed his sword technique to its limits and used teleportation to constantly change his position, forcefully suppressing Pandora. In fact, Zhou Wen and Li Xian had the upper hand. Pandora's strongest point wasn't her combat ability. Her calamity domain wasn't a combat-type domain either, but the power of temptation. However, Zhou Wen and Li Xian didn't fall for it. Pandora's calamity domain was basically useless against them. They could only rely on their own strength to fight the divine artifact. If not for the 4 divine artifacts protecting him, Zhou Wen would have long slain her. The Vulcan clothes focused on defense, the headband focused on offense, and the necklace had the ability to flash. When it was activated, it would blind one's eyes, but this ability didn't have much of an effect on Zhou Wen. As for the ring, it seemed to have some strengthening effect on Pandora. It wasn't an artifact that actively attacked. Soon, Zhou Wen familiarized himself with Pandora's various techniques as the immortal culling sword in his hand became more and more ruthless. Boom! The crystal ball's countdown had reached 3, but Zhou Wen was already confident that Pandora wouldn't be able to last until the countdown ended. After being held back by Li Xian, Pandora's figure paused slightly. Zhou Wen's immortal culling sword had already stabbed straight at her chest, hoping to kill her on the spot. Clang! Just as the immortal culling sword had pierced through the Vulcan clothes and was about to pierce through Pandora's body, he heard the sound of metal clashing. The immortal culling sword was blocked by something and failed to stab in. Zhou retracted his sword and teleported, dodging Pandora's counterattack. He saw something appear from the spot where the blade had pierced through. It was a black square box that looked similar to a Rubik's Cube. Furthermore, its color was pure black. It was very similar to the gigantic Rubik's Cube that appeared all over the world, but it was much more mesmerizing. Could that be Pandora's box? Zhou stared at the box as he thought. Without any time to think, the countdown continued. Zhou unleashed his sword techniques and slashed at Pandora with even greater ferocity. However, what happened next left Zhou somewhat alarmed. The Rubik's box seemed to have a life of its own as it floated around Pandora. No matter where Zhou immortal culling sword slashed, the Rubik's box would instantly appear and block the immortal culling sword. Zhou had several sure-kill immortal slaying stances, but they were all blocked by the Rubik's Cube. Chapter 1448. The Magic Cube was elusive. No matter what tricky angle Zhou attacked from, the Magic Cube would appear in time to block the immortal culling sword. Although the culling immortal sword could leave some sword marks on the Rubik's Cube, it seemed somewhat difficult to cut it open. Rumble. Time passed without them realizing it. The crystal lamp's countdown had already turned into a 2. There wasn't much time left for them. Zhou secretly used the time theft ability to make the immortal culling sword stab at Pandora a little later, but the outcome was the same. The Magic Cube still appeared accurately and blocked the immortal culling sword. Banana Fairy and the Golden Battle God also attacked from afar, but their attacks weren't of much use to the Calamity-grade Pandora, who was wearing the Vulcan armor. Now, the true threat to Pandora was the immortal culling sword in Zhou hand. Li Xian. Zhou constantly attacked Pandora as he suddenly shouted. Li Xian was too familiar with Zhou. When he saw Zhou's gaze, he already knew what he was up to. He gathered his strength and struck the back of Pandora's head while she was being restrained by Zhou. As Zhou had attracted all of Pandora's attention, she had no time to block Li Xian's palm. Li Xian wore the Planet Devourer glove on his palm. When he slapped Pandora's head, the Devourer glove sucked away a lot of the fire outside her body, forming an opening. Dang! Li Xian's palm struck down, but he failed to hit Pandora's head. The Pandora box strangely appeared and blocked Li Xian's palm. Good timing! Li Xian had been waiting for this moment. His strength erupted crazily as the Planet Devourer glove's suction force increased. He forcefully sucked the Pandora's box and grabbed it, preventing it from moving. Zhou's sword beam was like a rainbow. Taking advantage of the moment the Pandora's box was grabbed by Li Xian, he slashed down with immortal slaying. The crazy sword beam instantly tore through Pandora's Vulcan golden silk robe. Buzz! The Pandora's box erupted with terrifying power as it tried to escape Li Xian's grasp. However, Li Xian grabbed onto the Pandora's box with all his might. The Planet Devourer frantically sucked at the Pandora's box in a bid to pull it into the black hole. Ka-cha! Li Xian's fingers were all severed, and the Planet Devourer glove was damaged as well. With blood spewing out, the Pandora's box moved again to block Zhou's sword. But this time it was still too slow. Puff! By the time the Pandora's box moved over, the immortal culling sword had already slashed into Pandora's head. From top to bottom, the sword slashed through like a flash of lightning. Zhou retracted his sword and retreated as Li Xian's injured palm automatically recovered. On the other side, Pandora stood in the air with the magic box floating in front of her. Both of them were motionless. A moment later, a line of blood appeared on Pandora's forehead. Then, the blood quickly spread downward. Pandora's body suddenly split into 2 and fell from the sky. Unfortunately, there was nothing left in Pandora's body. There wasn't even a dimensional crystal. The divine artifacts on her quickly shattered after her death, leaving behind only fragments. After Pandora's death, the magic box seemed to lose its life. It fell from the sky and rolled to the ground. It's finally done. Li Xian heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to pick up the box on the ground, he heard another boom. The crystal lamp changed again, this time to 1. What's going on? Pandora is already dead. Why is the crystal lamp still counting down? Li Xian was alarmed. When the countdown stopped at 1, the mechanism might have already been activated. Even if it stopped at 0, there wasn't much time left. With a thought, Zhou recalled that there were still 2 flowers he hadn't shot down. He hurriedly summoned the golden dual guns back and fired at the 2 flowers, shooting them down. After the 2 flowers landed on the ground, Zhou didn't wait for them to float over. He rushed forward and shot at the 2 flowers. When he arrived in front of the flowers, his hands pierced through a flower. Thankfully, there weren't any dimensional creatures inside. It was still the power of the curse. It followed Zhou arm and immediately triggered Truth Listener's power. It directly converted the curse power into primordial energy and nourished Zhou body. Zhou and Li Xian raised their heads and stared nervously at the crystal lamp to see if it would continue counting down. Time ticked by, and when the crystal lamp should have changed again, the crystal lamp actually moved again. Zhou and Li Xian's faces darkened as their hearts nearly stopped. Who knew what would happen after the crystal lamp's countdown ended? Just as the 2 of them were prepared to risk their lives, they saw the crystal lamp's shape change from 1 to 2. It didn't turn into 0 like they had imagined. Their eyeballs nearly popped out as they felt the thrill of being on a roller coaster. Holy sh*t, what the hell is this? It's going to scare me to death. Li Xian cursed. From the looks of it, the crystal lamp's countdown has been stopped by us. If nothing unexpected happens, we should be able to leave when the crystal lamp returns to its original state. Zhou heaved a sigh of relief. Those 2 shots weren't bad. When did you practice them? Not bad, Li Xian joked. Please call me Gunslinger. Zhou pretended to blow at the muzzle and spun the golden dual guns a few times on his fingers before retracting them. He lowered his head and picked up the Rubik's Cube on the ground. Old Zhou, be careful. That's the legendary Pandora's box. Opening it might bring a catastrophe to the world. Li Xian was given a fright when he saw Zhou casually grab the Pandora's box. Don't worry. It won't be that easy to open. I used the immortal culling sword to strike it so many times, but it didn't crack open. It'll be even more difficult to open it with my hands. Zhou sized up the Pandora's box. Upon closer inspection, the Pandora's box really looked like a cube. Although its color was the same, each face was divided into 9 squares. In the middle, there was an almost invisible gap. This Pandora's box looks like a Rubik's Cube no matter how I look at it. Zhou twisted it with his hand and the Pandora's box really moved. Like a Rubik's Cube, Zhou turned it 90 degrees. Holy sh*t, don't mess around. Li Xian jumped up in fright. Zhou never expected that this thing could really be twisted. He had struck so many times without any movement, so he never expected that it could really be twisted. Zhou didn't dare move the Rubik's Cube as cold sweat broke out on his forehead. If this thing was really as the legend said, all sorts of calamities, plagues, and diseases would wreak havoc on the world after it was opened, he would really be a sinner. Thankfully, the Rubik's Cube only showed signs of opening after being twisted. It remained quietly in Zhou palm. Thankfully, it's fine. Zhou wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Only then did he realize that his body was covered in cold sweat. His clothes were drenched. Chapter 1449. Zhou held the magic box and didn't dare move it again. He waited for the crystal lamp's countdown to change. The numbers on the crystal lamp gradually changed and soon returned to 9. Finally, it returned to its original state. Then, he saw the door to the temple appear on the side of the garden. Zhou went up to push the door, but he couldn't push it open. He knew that only Su Yi could open it, so he released Su Yi and Lu Yun. Su Yi continued being attracted by Zhou Wen's fragrance and other powers. Lu Yun was much better. The curse power on him had clearly weakened, and he had a certain level of resistance to Zhou Wen's attraction. At the very least, he didn't look at Zhou Wen with lust. However, he was clearly a little exhausted. Eldest senior brother, how can I open the door? Zhou Wen made the obedient Su Yi try, but he failed to push the door open. You have to press her hands on the unicorn horn on the door and pierce her skin. Only her blood can open the door, Lu Yun said. Zhou Wen got Su Yi to give it a try. Indeed, Su Yi's hands pressed on the unicorn horn at the same time. His palm was pierced by the horn and blood stained it. The door immediately opened a crack. Zhou Wen and company hurriedly pulled Su Yi and teleported out of the temple. After leaving the temple, Zhou Wen transformed into his terror form, preventing the program crew who were searching outside from seeing him. I'll leave the matters here to you. I'll deal with the magic box first, Zhou Wen said to Li Xian before heading for the exit of the Demon Palace. After teleporting out of the Demon Palace, Zhou Wen teleported to the moon. Goddess Supreme Yin, do you know what this is? Zhou Wen brought the magic box to Goddess Supreme Yin's temple. Goddess Supreme Yin's voice floated out from the temple. It looks like a spatial item. Zhou Wen explained the origins of the magic box to Goddess Supreme Yin. After hearing that, Goddess Supreme Yin pondered for a moment before saying, according to the myths and legends, there are two possibilities for the magic box. One is that the magic box itself is a calamity-grade creature, but from the looks of it, it shouldn't be a calamity-grade creature. The second possibility is that there's a calamity creature trapped in the magic box. Once the magic box is opened, the calamity creature inside will escape and cause a huge disaster. In my opinion, the latter is very likely. In that case, there's a high chance that there are dimensional creatures with misfortune attributes inside. Is it possible to use the calamity creatures inside the magic cube to produce mythical fluid? And then give it to Little Chan? Zhou Wen asked after some thought. Unless you have the ability to suppress the unknown number of calamity creatures inside, don't even think about it. From the perspective of myths and legends, the calamity creature in the box is probably not an ordinary calamity grade. Furthermore, it's very likely that there is more than one. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to cause such a huge disaster. Goddess Supreme Yin paused for a moment before saying, besides, I've already said that it's best to use mythical creatures to create mythical liquid. Otherwise, Wang Chan's body might not be able to withstand it. Zhou Wen was immediately depressed as he held the magic box and asked, how do you think I should deal with this? What else can you do? If you don't have enough power to destroy the thing inside, then seal it forever and never try to open it, Goddess Taiyin said. When Zhou Wen heard that, he knew that it was best not to open the box forever. He sent it into the chaos bead and sealed it in a corner. He left the moon and returned to Luoyang with Ye. After returning to his room, Zhou Wen was in the mood to look at the 4 calamity-grade companion beasts he had obtained on his phone. Vulcan Golden Silk Robe, calamity grade, only usable by Maiden of Misfortune Life Providence. War Headband, calamity grade, only usable by Maiden of Misfortune Life Providence. Sun Necklace, calamity grade, only usable by Maiden of Misfortune Life Providence. Underworld God Ring, calamity grade, only usable by Maiden of Misfortune Life Providence. After Zhou Wen read the attributes of the 4 calamity grade companion eggs, he was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. These 4 companion beasts were limited to the number of people who could use them. Even if he obtained them, he wouldn't be able to summon them without the support of a special life providence. What a pity! Zhou Wen carefully studied the attributes of the 4 calamity-grade companion eggs. They were indeed very good, but unfortunately, he couldn't use them. Wang Chan's life providence has the attribute of misfortune, but she doesn't seem to be a maiden of misfortune. I wonder if she can summon these 4 companion beasts. Zhou thought that he could give it a try when he had the time in the future. However, Zhou didn't plan on going now. Firstly, Wang Chan's current level was too low. It wasn't a good thing for her to have these calamity-grade companion beasts. Secondly, Zhou had a very serious problem to resolve. After obtaining the augmentation of the powers in Pandora, no matter where Zhou went, as long as someone saw him, they would look at him like a beast in heat. Their gazes made Zhou's hair stand on end. Only creatures above the terror grade had some resistance to the powers in him. I have to resolve the problem on my body. Zhou didn't even dare go out. He had come up with some solutions. Even using Truth Listener and the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder couldn't resolve the problem on his body. After all, these powers were beneficial to Zhou and weren't malicious powers like curses. Evil nullification and the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder weren't of much use. No matter how Zhou thought about it, he couldn't think of a way to completely remove the strange powers on him. Young Master One, your bamboo blade has been recast. And Xing came to Zhou's yard with a rectangular box. Thankfully, the power didn't affect Xing at all. Over the past few days, Xing had been delivering food to him. He didn't dare let anyone enter the yard. Leave it there. Zhou wasn't in the mood to care about the bamboo blade. Take a look first. If there's anything inappropriate and needs to be modified, I can take it back and get them to modify it, Xing said as he placed the box in front of Zhou. Zhou thought that it made sense and opened the box. After taking a look, Zhou asked in puzzlement, has the bamboo blade's scabbard been recast as well? Yes, the saber and scabbard are one. A recast saber will more or less not match the previous scabbard, so I might as well recast them together, Xing said. Zhou reached out to take the bamboo blade and couldn't help but be surprised. In the past, the bamboo blade was already heavy enough, but now it was even heavier than before. Zhou felt rather heavy as he held the bamboo blade. Even with his strength, he felt weight. It was obvious that the bamboo blade's weight was extremely terrifying. Now, the bamboo blade's appearance seemed to be gradually larger. Including the scabbard, it was 4 feet long. Its entire body was gray. In the past, the bamboo blade was closer to black, but now it was a gray that was between black and white. It looked very strange, but its quality was very good. Chapter 1450. The saber and scabbard were connected without any gap. It was like a piece of gray bamboo. Zhou held the hilt and slowly pulled the bamboo blade out of the scabbard. He saw that the blade inside was the same as the scabbard. It was grayish-white in color and looked heavy. However, if one looked carefully at the blade, they would realize that the blade wasn't as thick as it looked. The heavy feeling came from the material itself. The blade was very thin, but one could only feel its sharpness when looking at the blade. If one only looked at the blade, they would feel that the blade was too heavy. Other materials were added to the bamboo blade? Zhou pulled out the bamboo blade and brandished it twice. He could clearly sense that the characteristics of the bamboo blade were somewhat different from before. As the reserves of essence gold are limited, we have been studying alloys recently. We happened to have some results and used them on the bamboo blade. And Xing explained, this new alloy has a qualitative leap from the previous bamboo blade, be it in terms of hardness or toughness. During the casting, with the help of the chick and many technological means, we were able to heat the alloy to a state where it can be cast. This shouldn't be an ordinary alloy, right? Zhou reached out and flicked the sword. The sword trembled, but it didn't make a sound. It was somewhat strange. Zhou knew very well that if there was really such brilliant alloy craftsmanship, the Sunset Army would have won or made it into bullets. The dimensional zones near Luoyang would have long been wiped out. It wouldn't be the current situation. There are relatively few materials to make this alloy, so there's no way to mass-produce it for the time being. Using it on the bamboo blade can be considered an attempt. The results aren't bad. And Sheng was telling the truth. It was indeed an attempt. During this period of time, they had used many methods to fuse the essence gold essence and holy metal together. They didn't completely rely on the chick's phoenix fire. Pure phoenix fire couldn't completely melt the two. How much did you spend on the materials? Zhouwen sheathed the bamboo blade. There were no suitable dimensional creatures to test it on, so he could only do so in the future. They are all materials for our own research. They aren't worth much, so don't think about it. However, there's something you need to pay attention to, young master. And Xing changed the topic. What is it? Although Zhouwen knew that Xing was changing the topic, he was somewhat curious. The Li family sent news that Xiao isn't dead. Furthermore, he has advanced to the calamity grade. There's a high chance that he'll seek revenge on you and the overseer, and Xing said with a solemn expression. That didn't kill him? Zhouwen was somewhat surprised. Even Zhouwen felt that he might not be able to withstand the Guardian's final explosion. It was indeed surprising that Xiao hadn't been blasted to death. In short, you have to be careful. Even the overseer said that Xiao is very terrifying. If you're not careful, he might grab hold of your weakness. And Xing repeatedly exhorted Zhouwen to be careful and not be careless. Zhouwen had fought Xiao before, so he knew that Xiao was indeed terrifying. And Tianzhua was actually able to finish off Xiao without anyone noticing in a dangerous place like the Holy Land. Furthermore, he had done it beautifully. It left Zhouwen very surprised. In fact, even Zhouwen couldn't guarantee that he could do better than Tianzhua. Furthermore, Zhouwen still hadn't figured out how Tianzhua had done it. Even if he subdued Xiao, it was unimaginable to control his guardian freely and use it as his own. Furthermore, he had to prevent the dimensional experts in the Holy Land from noticing any flaws. Got it. Zhouwen thought that even if he wanted to pay, Xing probably wouldn't want it. Furthermore, it wasn't easy to estimate the value of such precious materials. He planned to return the favor when Luoyang encountered a problem. What do I have to do to eliminate these strange powers? Zhouwen was still worried about what had happened. Beep. His phone suddenly rang. Zhouwen picked it up and realized that it was a message from the Tharch. Have you considered my previous suggestion? The Thearcha's message left Zhouwen somewhat puzzled. Previously, the Tharch had wanted him to pull out the stone saber on the Fire God platform, but the condition she had given was to help him clear the Venus dimensional zone. However, he had already obtained the companion beast in the Venus dimensional zone. Furthermore, the Venus dimensional zone and half of Venus had already shattered. Now, the Tharch had sent him such a message. It left him confused. The Tharch, how long has it been since you last read the news? Don't you know that the Venus dimensional zone has been destroyed? Zhouwen sent a message. Of course I know. Not only do I know that Venus has been destroyed, but I also know that the Venus companion beast is with you. The Tharch quickly sent a message. You must be joking. I do want it, but unfortunately I'm not good enough, Zhouwen replied. Don't think that you can rest easy just because you obtained the Venus companion beast. Don't forget that there's more than one Venus in the solar system. The Tharch had clearly determined that Zhouwen was human emperor. That has nothing to do with me. Even if companion beasts from other planets appear, there will naturally be experts like human emperor to snatch them, Zhouwen said. Your abilities have increased quite a bit, but unfortunately, you're still too short-sighted, the Tharch said. Then, please give me some pointers and let me see further. Zhouwen didn't mind. He took the opportunity to get some information out of her. Do you think everything will be fine after snatching the Venus companion beast? I suggest you take a look at the recent Federation news. The Tharch quickly sent another message. What news? Zhouwen was puzzled. However, the Tharch didn't reply. All Zhouwen could do was take a look online. Soon, Zhouwen knew what news the Tharch wanted him to see. Although the matter of human emperor obtaining the Venus companion beast was the mainstream headline in the various media outlets, one could still see many news reports of large-scale breakouts in certain dimensional zones. Zhouwen searched and realized that ever since Venus shattered, many places had experienced large-scale breakouts of dimensional zones. Although there had been such incidents in the past, they weren't as frequent. In particular, the frequency at which calamity creatures appeared had increased significantly. Is the recent breakout creature related to Venus? Zhouwen tried sending another message to the Tharch. What else? The shattering of every star in the solar system will have a huge impact on Earth. If the companion beasts in the Sun also appear, it won't be as simple as an impact. If the Sun also shatters, it will be a problem if Earth can still be suitable for human survival. The Tharch finally replied. Chapter 1451. Zhouwen had previously thought of this problem. It wasn't just Zhouwen. After Venus shattered, many people were worried. If the other stars or even the Sun had companion beasts, what would happen after they broke out of the star? Ignoring everything else, if there was no Sun, humans below the mythical stage would probably find it difficult to survive on Earth. Furthermore, if the Sun exploded, the energy produced would have an immeasurable impact on Earth. Even if you obtain all the companion beasts after they are born, so what? The Thearcha's message came again. What do you mean? Zhouwen didn't know what the Tharch was up to. Help me do a few things. I'll tell you how to prevent such a situation from happening, the Tharch said. What is it? Zhouwen wanted to hear what the Tharch was up to. The first thing is that I've already said it before. I want that stone saber. There are also a few things that I need your help with. Of course, with your stubborn personality, I'm afraid you won't be willing to do it now. It's fine. I can wait. When the planets shatter one by one, you will naturally beg to cooperate with me. The Tharch knew Zhouwen's character rather well, so she wasn't in a hurry. I sincerely hope to cooperate with you. Why don't you tell me what it is? Zhouwen still wanted to ask. However, the Tharch ignored him and didn't send him any messages. I'll take it one step at a time. Zhouwen also knew that the possibility the Tharch mentioned did exist, but there was nothing he could do. Zhouwen continued studying how to eliminate the strange powers on him. Otherwise, it would be too troublesome. With these things on him, he couldn't hide himself at all. It was impossible to use other identities. From the looks of it, it's impossible to remove them. Is there any way to hide the powers of these fragrances? Just as Zhouwen was thinking, the mysterious phone vibrated. Could it be that the golden WRM has finished giving birth? Zhouwen picked up his phone and realized that it wasn't that the golden WRM had finished giving birth, but that a fruit on the dead man tree had ripened. The fruit was produced after the metal flower was absorbed. This was the first time the dead man tree had absorbed a creature other than humans, so Zhouwen had always been looking forward to what kind of companion beast the metal flower could give birth to. Seeing that the metal flower's companion egg had finally matured, Zhouwen hurriedly looked at its information. Metal seed, mortal, evolvable, strength, 11 speed, 11 constitution, 11 essence energy, 11 talent skill, metal evolution. Companion form, ring. Ring-type companion beasts are rather rare, but what does metal evolution mean? Zhouwen studied the annotation and only knew that it was the ability of a metal lifeform's evolution. He didn't know what this evolution referred to. He hatched it and summoned the metal seed. Then, a purple metal seed appeared in Zhouwen's hand. This seed was only the size of a quail egg. It was covered in blood-colored patterns, making it look beautiful and mysterious. However, this thing seemed to be a dead object. It couldn't move, nor did it have any offensive or defensive abilities. Zhouwen studied it for a long time but failed to discover any use for it. After transforming the metal seed into a ring form, a purple metal ring appeared on Zhouwen's left pinky, but he didn't feel any special effects. Looks like I'll have to wait for it to advance to a higher level before I know what its use is. Zhou attempted to use essence crystals to mature the metal seed, but he realized that it was useless. The metal seed didn't absorb essence energy. While Zhou was studying the metal seed, Xiao was half kneeling in front of the holy deity in the Holy Land. Your Excellency, I've successfully advanced to the Calamity grade. Please allow me to head to Luoyang and eliminate Antianzhua. Zhao's tone was calm, but one could sense the hatred in his heart. Antianzhua naturally has to be eliminated, but before that, there's one more thing you need to do. It won't be too late to eliminate Antianzhua after you're done, said the holy deity. Your Excellency, what instructions do you have? Xiao lowered his head. The holy deity glanced at him. It's indeed a great talent for you to be able to return from the lake of vexation alive, but you ultimately failed to reach the other side. Zhao's life was given to me by your Excellency. I'll do whatever you say, Xiao said. He failed to reach the other side. In the end, it was the holy deity who pulled him out of the lake of vexation. However, the holy deity said, "You can live because of your own ability. If you can't persevere until you reach the mythical stage, it will be difficult for me to pull you out of the lake of vexation even if I have supreme means." That may be the case, but if not for your Excellency, I would have long been a corpse at the bottom of the lake. Furthermore, you have given me so much help. I can return to the Calamity grade in such a short period of time. No. I should say that I've truly advanced to the Calamity grade. Xiao had advanced to the Calamity grade by himself, not by relying on a guardian. You have just advanced to the Calamity grade, and Luoyang has existences like Shouwen and Antianzhua. You might not succeed. The place I'm sending you to this time is not only for you to complete the mission, but it can also increase your strength and give you a chance to improve further. When the time comes, no one will be able to stop you when you go to Luoyang, the holy deity said indifferently. Your Excellency, where do you want me to go? Xiao couldn't help but ask. I want you to enter the lake of vexation again and reach the other side, the holy deity said. I've already proven that I can't reach the other side, Xiao said in a dilemma. It was impossible before, but it doesn't mean it's impossible now. You previously used the power of the lake of vexation to advance to the mythical body. Your body already has the power of the lake of vexation, so the effects of the lake of vexation on you have been reduced to the minimum. Coupled with your current calamity grade strength, you will definitely be able to reach the other side if nothing unexpected happens. What happens after I reach the other side? Xiao asked. Didn't I tell you before that I once saw a person who couldn't have survived swim across the lake of vexation and reach the other side? After you reach the other side, find him. No matter what methods you use, you have to bring him back. When the holy deity mentioned that person, the look in her eyes was somewhat strange. Xiao was slightly surprised. If that person can really swim to the other side by himself, he must be a very terrifying existence. Can my strength bring him back? Humans are humans after all. No matter how strong they are, they can't withstand the power of time. With his age, even if he's still alive, he's probably on the verge of death. He's definitely no match for you. If he's dead, bring his corpse back, said the Xing deity. What kind of person is he? Xiao couldn't help but ask curiously. Chapter 1452. You will naturally know when you see him. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. No matter what, you have to bring him back. Watermark advertisement test. After the watermark advertisement test is completed, I will grant you the temporary right to hold the holy artifact of the Trajectory Holy Temple in the name of the holy deity, said the holy deity. I can really hold the holy artifact? Xiao was pleasantly surprised. Each of the 6 holy temples had a holy artifact. Xiao came from the Trajectory Holy Temple, So if he could hold the holy artifact of the trajectory holy temple, his strength would definitely increase greatly. It wouldn't be difficult for him to destroy Luoyang. The holy artifact cannot leave the holy temple for too long, nor can it be left on earth for long. You can hold it for a day, said the holy deity. That's enough, Xiao said through gritted teeth. Go, the holy deity said calmly. Xiao jumped into the lake of worry again. This time, he still felt his body sink as though many invisible wraiths were pulling at his body. However, compared to the first time he came down, the strength was much weaker. Xiao swam forward with all his might, preventing himself from sinking into the bottomless abyss. The world was filled with worries. It was easy to break bones and desire peace. If a person didn't have any desires, they wouldn't have any worries. However, humans were ultimately humans. If they didn't have any desires, what was the difference between living and walking corpses? It was impossible for everyone to not have worries. With worries, it was impossible to swim across the lake of worry alive, much less reach the other shore. It looked like the other shore wasn't far away, but no matter how hard Xiao swam, the other shore was always right in front of him, but he couldn't touch it. In the lake, his body seemed to be entangled by threads, making it increasingly difficult for Xiao to move. He slowly sank to the bottom of the lake, where all mortals return to. Xiao felt his consciousness gradually turn blurry. He long knew that even if he advanced to the mythical stage in the Lake of Worry, reaching the other shore was still a perilous situation. I can't die yet. Xiao bit the tip of his tongue, hoping to use the pain to wake himself up. However, this method was clearly useless. He bit the tip of his tongue, but he only felt numb. Blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth, but he didn't feel anything. Still can't cross. The holy deity watched Xiao sink to the bottom of the lake from afar, and couldn't help but frown. Many powerful creatures found it difficult to swim across the lake of annoyance. Even dimensional experts were no exception. However, that weak human had swam across the lake of worry despite certain death. The holy deity had seen it with her own eyes. Therefore, the saint god had always tried to use humans to reach the other side. Xiao was not the first person to try, and he would not be the last. What a pity! This person's talent and will are among the best among the holy disciples. With Zhao's current position, even the Xing god could not pull him back. Thus, the Xing god felt that it was a pity, but it was just a fleeting thought. After all, he was just a human. He could be slowly nurtured in the future. If one died, more holy disciples would appear in the future. He had all the time in the world to wait. Seeing that Xiao was about to sink to the bottom of the lake, the Xing deity was about to turn around and leave when she suddenly saw Xiao struggling desperately in the lake. Xiao. Xiao, how can his consciousness be so pure? Can hatred really make a person so pure? The holy deity looked at Xiao, who was swimming back to the other shore, in astonishment. But other than that, he couldn't think of any other power that could make Zhao's mind so pure. In Zhao's mind, some deeply sealed memories were awakening bit by bit. On the grass in the suburbs, two children were wrestling with each other. I'm the strongest. I'm the strongest. While the two children were tearing each other apart, a tall and thin middle-aged man passed by and watched with interest from the side. After watching for a while, the middle-aged man seemed to find it a little boring. His figure suddenly flashed, and the two children who were wrestling with each other were picked up by the collar with each hand. Who are you? What do you want? Let me go. The two children kicked and struggled with all their might, but the middle-aged man was tall and thin. His arms were especially long. Their short legs couldn't reach the middle-aged man's body at all. Don't you want to see who's stronger? You won't be able to do that. Let me tell you, how do you know who's stronger? The middle-aged man said as his figure flashed and quickly moved toward the forest in the distance. A piece of wood had been placed on the top of a sword-like mountain peak. It looked like a warped board, and only the middle part of the wood was on the top of the mountain peak. On each side of the wood stood a child. Their weight affected the balance of the wood, causing it to undulate left and right as if it would fall into a bottomless abyss at any time. If you want a duel, you have to do it in a place like this. As long as you beat your opponent down, the other person will naturally be the strongest without a doubt. The middle-aged man stood on an ancient tree branch that protruded from the cliff and looked at the two children as he spoke. If it had been an ordinary youth, they would have peed their pants in fear. They might have even fallen out of fear. However, although the two children were young and nervous, they weren't as afraid as ordinary children. They slowly moved their bodies and tried to maintain the balance of the wood so that it wouldn't tilt and fall. For them to be able to act so calmly at their age made the middle-aged man even more interested. It's actually very simple to kill your opponent. You just need to run to the middle faster than your opponent. When the wood loses its balance, your opponent will naturally fall down. I will send the one who survives back, the middle-aged man said. The two children looked at each other and rushed toward the middle almost at the same time. Interesting. The middle-aged man found it more and more interesting. The two children reached the middle almost at the same time, but the mountain peak was too sharp and the bottom was a slippery cliff. It was impossible to stand on. One of the children reached out to push the other child without hesitation, wanting to push him down. However, who knew that the other child didn't push forward like he did? Instead, he tilted his body slightly and jumped up. The child who reached out to push the wood didn't expect such a move at all. He used too much force and his body rushed over. Without the weight to support him on the other side, the wood immediately slid down. The child's body also fell along with the wood. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.